So the one thing that I want to say,
he said I think he said he's going to have to start a show, so I guess we're going to have to.
I mean, Katie, do you want to start us off and introduce the topic or anything? Hi, everyone. You're live now on my side.
Oh yeah, hi everyone. We're live now. Whick needs to stop being a centrist, and we're here to make him stop doing that because it's annoying. And like sometimes when he does panels, he does this thing where it's not even playing devil's advocate. It's just like, let's both sides this issue because I think there's some inherent qualitative virtue to both siding an issue when it's like, Whick is the kind of guy that would go like, let's have a discussion about flat earthers. And then he'd go, okay, but let's imagine the world was flat, okay? Let's just imagine that. Wouldn't you then say that like flat earthers has a point? And it's like, yes, dude, but that doesn't matter. Okay, that's the topic.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone to I don't even know if we call this an episode of WhickTV. This is an episode of Katie TV, Dat Katie, I guess, and I have been graciously invited on to take part in. I'm not exactly sure. We're gonna find out. So grab your butts, gang. We're going in hot. Hi everyone. Is everyone doing good today? Everyone having fun?
Are you talking to your stream or us?
You.
Oh, listen.
I don't. The chatters can chat. I'm going to ignore them unless they pay me money. So
I'm doing very well. What about you? How are you? How are you? The rest of you?
Good. I'm ready for Whick's intervention or cancellation, however he chooses to play it.
Starting with the coercion, I love
this. This is just an
standard
intervention
lefty stuff, right?
Whick, this is us coming to you with affection. You are injecting the heroin of centrism into your veins, and we want you to stop. We want you to stop. It's time to be on the left, to join us as a based progressive.
Okay. And I'd like to, with the love that I feel for you, to just point out that like centrists specifically, with their unique disdain for what they see the online left to be, they have this real need to create certain narratives about the left. So you guys don't know this, but behind the scene when we were talking, I was just making casual jokes with Pondering, and then Whick was like, see, the left can't help but fight with itself. And then Corey does the fucking mistake and falling into the centrist narrative and being like, we're trying to cancel you. I'm sorry. Canceling is not a thing. No one's canceling Whick. We love you, Whick.
Well, thank
you. You are in danger. You're suffering, and we're trying to help you.
That's why I said intervention, as in like before Whick hits rock bottom, metaphorically, like, we want him to,
Whick assures me
actually on the left.
Corey, Whick assures me as long as he hits the dead center of the bottom, he doesn't care. That's the most righteous point of rock bottom. As long as it's not too far to the left at the rock bottom or even too far to the right, because then he'll never hear the end of it. Can you imagine the abuse that Whick would suffer if he landed more on the left of rock bottom?
Well,
see, but Pondering, here's the thing. And it's like kind of related to what you and I were talking about earlier when you said that the left is anything that you would consider not a conservative. The issue is that I truly believe Whick would rather be more conservative leaning than be more progressive leaning. I feel like Whick has...
Okay. Can you tell me why you think... Okay, so first of all, we are waiting on one more person, so we're just kind of killing time, gang. We are waiting on one more...
Tell him who it is, Whick.
Individual. President Sunday, I guess, is coming in to help Katie convert me. And also Josiah and Corey as well. But I gotta ask, right? And maybe President Sunday will have a different answer when he gets here, but I'm curious, like... Because this isn't something I've heard just from you, Katie. It's something I've heard from a few people. But I am having trouble kind of understanding what my more conservative positions are.
It's not about conservative positions because, again, you're pretty much a centrist. And in terms of your positions, I think you're a lot more liberal than conservative. the reason why I wouldn't say that you lean progressive, however, is, and you and I like always get on top of this, like the issue with like systemic problems and the way to identify them and like focus on them as the main core. I also feel like, and this relates to what me and Pondering were talking about earlier, like liberals and centrists, you know, like it's not even a meme that like you cut a liberal and a fascist bleeds.
Do you think I'm a
it's like,
fascist?
no, I think you're an enabler. And that's kind of what I was gonna
Do you
tell
think I'm
Pondering
enabling,
as
Corey?
well.
Am I enabling fascism?
I wouldn't go that, but
Not
so
fascism,
I
but
totally understand
conservative.
Katie's perspective so I'll just go from my perspective, in that I don't think you're enabling fascism, and I wouldn't put the
Conservative.
label of enabler on you per se, but let's say, given, let's say, the conversations that you want to have, either seriously or in a meme way, I think like you might be promoting things that maybe don't intentionally want to promote, put it that way. But just like basically,
What about you, 𝕿𝖎𝖙? Do I enable fascism or conservatism? I
Okay,
guess?
stop saying fascism. It's the same.
You
it's a
said
thing, but
when
what
you
I
cut a
mean is,
liberal, a fascist bleeds, and that's not even a meme.
Whick, what that means is that, okay, let me make it very clear.
Please.
I think you enable conservatism, and I think conservatism enables fascism. Okay, does that help you?
Then I guess same question. I guess how?
Okay,
Corey said.
I
Corey,
would
Corey,
say-
Corey said that it's because I have conversations that promote conservative
well, okay,
ideals.
so
Is
I
that-
can try to give a more concrete. Sorry
Please.
to cut you off, Ruminate. But yeah, I understand that. Let's say what I said was a little bit maybe largely ambiguous, because like I am pro conversation. Well, I mean, just the fact that I go on panels, I would like to think it's clear that I'm pro conversation. But do I think like every conversation either needs to be had? You can have it, but does it need to be had? I think is a separate question. Of like, so I'll use maybe some of the examples again, whether intentionally or not. And I know not every single panel that you hold is like, for serious, the most academic discussion, and some of them are just strictly for fun. But I think you've had panels of whatever, locking certain demographics up, and I understand those are probably like less serious.
Locking.
But I'm curious.
When you talk about my cage all men's panel.
Or those of like, let's say, certain whatever mental illnesses or mental health issues.
Oh, forced institutionalization, bringing that back.
So I'm
that wasn't
curious.
a meme panel, by the way. That was a serious discussion.
Yes.
So
that's
how about
much worse.
I'll propose maybe for you. Would you want to hold the panel discussion of like locking conservatives up, as in people with reduced cognitive abilities, in the vein of mental illness, and all that stuff?
No.
Why?
Because when we talk about forced institutionalization, it isn't for people with ADHD or autism or things like that. It's for people who literally cannot function in the real world, who are so disabled.
Not every person with autism. There are many high functioning individuals with autism. There's a huge spectrum.
That's why I said we're putting those people to the side. We're not talking about those people. When we're talking about the forced okay, so the reason we talked about the forced institutionalization of people was because of the subway incident where that man was killed. If he was in an institution and getting the help he needed, he wouldn't have been on the subway, and he wouldn't have been putting himself in danger like that. But
putting himself in danger.
Yes.
Okay.
These people, when they're out on the streets and they cannot function, they are in danger, either to depredation, right? To bad actors abusing them, right? The people on the streets who are not in any kind of shelter or institutionalization are often victimized over and over again, and they have little to no recourse. This is a terrible situation for them. It's not good.
What I was protesting is the framing of putting themselves in danger, but I agree with you that people who are on the streets are more likely to be victimized than victimize someone else.
Therefore, they're in danger.
I don't need to agree with that. It's statistically correct. So,
okay, but I guess to the larger point, not to just make this a debate about this, but I mean, that wasn't a mean panel, and it is a question we have. Reagan got rid of institutions in the 80s. A lot of people think that was a mistake, right? And so, the discussion should be had. Should we bring it back, and what would that look like, and what would that be like? Right? I think that's very that's not a conservative position. That's a very progressive.
So sorry, not to, because I wasn't there for this conversation and I didn't watch it. So I'd like to bring it back to kind of a broader thing, because sure. Katie gave her interpretation, Corey gave his. Here's mine. Whick, I think that you give an undeserved charity and benefit of the doubt to the Republican Party and the conservative movement here in the United States, which they don't deserve. And I think you also hold the left and progressives to a higher performative and ethical standard, which makes their jobs harder.
Which makes them an enabler.
Right. So I would agree that you do enable conservatism, not because I think you personally hold conservative political beliefs, but because I think you have the instincts of a centrist. When you see two sides in conflict, I feel like you have an instinct towards the golden means fallacy, this idea that there must be some truth at the dead center, when in reality, in the modern political movement, Stephen Colbert said it 10 years ago, reality has a well-known liberal bias. And I think that you fight that without real basis. So that's my frustration. I think you step over $1 for the sake of a nickel. If 10 conservative, very popular right-wing figures say something like wanting to eradicate trans people, you clearly don't support that, but you fixate more on an infinitesimally smaller progressive doing something cringe.
There is.
I think your focus is off. That's my opinion.
I understand. I think the reason that you have this perception of me, right, is because we dwell in a very left-wing space. Most people we interact with are on the left or progressive in nature, right, to some degree. There's simply more of them that come into this space to criticize, right? Conservatives are few and far between in this space. So I understand why it would look like I am more critical to the left than I am to the right. I will grant you this, though. I do hold my side to a higher standard than I do the other side. I have no sway or influence over conservatives. I am not in those circles. True. I am not a conservative. I hold a little sway amongst leftists, just a small tad and things like that.
Why am I raising my hand? Sorry.
I don't know. It's your show, but I'm just trying
You may speak, Katie, on your own show. I grant you permission.
No, wait, please continue. I will wait. I'm sorry, I'm passionate.
Because I have some cachet or influence within the leftist circles, I am going to use that to influence the leftists. There are plenty of people who will call out the bad actors on conservative side. I see it on my timeline. They're dunking. They're doing their thing. That's covered. I don't need to. You do that. You guys take that route, right? But what I can do is if I see someone who is doing an action that I consider to be detrimental to my values or to the cause, quote unquote, I'm gonna call them out. I don't see a problem with that.
But don't conservatives call?
No, Bonner, you shut the fuck up. Okay, I am sorry.
Look at the infighting. Can't help it.
Already.
Yeah.
Right?
This isn't a leftist thing. This is a Katie thing. Okay, don't blame leftism for my rudeness.
President Sunday's backstage, Katie. Just to let you know.
Oh, and $5 from Muda Agarwal to say the burden of proof is always higher on progressive side since conservatives have centuries of history as their proof. That has always been the case.
Yeah.
Their money. They give me money. I say what they give me money for.
I understand, but here's the thing, and I was just going to say that. Whick, your audience is continuously at a civil war. Do you know why your audience is so diverse? Do you know why your audience has so many conservatives, so many people who donate that type of bullshit that you just read out loud? It's because your content attracts those type of people. So when you say, and it's not like, oh, we shouldn't talk to these people. I'm just saying that when you say, oh, I have no sway over conservatives, that's not true. They are literally in your audience because you are an enabler and they find a comfortable space in that content. The other point that I wanted to make that you said is that I'm completely fine. Again, me and Pondering just talked about this backstage. Criticizing leftism for valid things is fine. Me and President Sunday had very interesting conversations about what's appropriate to criticize and what not, and to what extent you should do that. When you criticize leftists and progressives, often it's about some culture war bullshit of Twitter people being mean, not actual progressive policies or stuff like that.
Can
And
you
that's
give me
what
an
I
example?
take issue with.
Sure. Can you give me an example so I can we can talk about it?
Yes, I remember specifically that I stopped going on your panels for a while because every panel you would bring up the way that leftists do cancel culture. And that's why when Corey said cancellation, I was like, don't get Whick started on cancellation. Whick has a boner for talking about leftists trying to cancel people. This will never end.
I also thought Whick had a sense of humor, so I wasn't being super.
Just one more mistake
But we
by the
don't in this
liberal
panel.
media trying to convert me to humor. What is this humor? You know what else has 5 letters? Nazis. Okay, see, it's all coming together, gang. Nazis.
It is. You're skipping
Anyway.
ahead. We're doing the Glenn
You're
Beck
Sorry.
doing
whiteboard
the
thing.
thing.
I do
Oh,
want to say
are you
that-
done though? Like, oh, go ahead.
Yes.
Well,
Design.
I was just gonna say, and I think Katie made a compelling point. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt and assume that you just don't recognize the extent to which your audience is comprised of conservatives or those who have sympathies towards the right. But I can tell you, every time I'm either in one of your panels or I've listened to them and the topic is political, anytime there's a super chat, it's almost always from a right-leaning perspective, kind of like that one, number one. Number two, I'll also say when you say that you hold the left to a higher standard because the right is already being criticized by the left, so that's covered. But doesn't the right also criticize the left for transgressions? So you are actually aligning with the right to criticize the left. If basically you should only allocate your effort to an area that's not getting any attention. Well, we have Michael Knowles, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, massive right-wing influencers constantly criticizing the right. So why are you pitching the left? Why are you pitching your voice in with them?
Also, Wick, just to quickly say something and then you can respond. I'm not saying that there's something wrong with your chat having conservatives in it if you are even willing to like take that. That's not, I don't think me and Pondering are saying that. I just said that to like demonstrate that actually there are conservatives in this space and they are gravitated towards your content. I'd argue for a reason. I'm not saying, well, I would say that's bad because supposedly you're saying that's not true, but it's not bad because conservatives are evil people that we don't want to be around. Yes, please.
Okay.
Respond.
So, couple things, right? Whether you are on the right or on the left or somewhere in the middle, if you are doing something that I view as incorrect, harmful, wrong, disingenuous, something that I don't like, right? For whatever reason, I'm not going to check your political persuasion before I criticize you for it. I'm just not going to. I'm no respecter of persons when it comes to that. If I see someone doing something that I think is wrong, I will step in and I will say, hey, don't do that, right?
Like you just said you don't check the right though, because that's covered though.
So put that in your pipe and smoke it.
What I
Mr.
said
President,
is
why
I
don't you have your camera on? Sorry,
be
just
more
Because if I put my camera on, it ejects me from the call for some reason.
Wow.
So that's
great.
just how
That's
it
Katie
is.
being bigoted
Okay.
towards Canadians.
Why are we?
I'm Canadian.
on
Wait,
screen here, by
no,
the
shut
way?
up. Wick is responding to my gotcha.
I
Please.
don't think that's a gotcha, right?
No.
I don't focus, right, on a lot of the dunks that a lot of other leftist content creators do. That's true.
It's just
right?
built.
You
different.
just
That's
did
true.
the thing.
The thing?
She's got you there, Whick. You did the thing.
The thing? What are we talking about? The thing?
The thing where you just like, oh, leftists do this thing with dunks, and it's like, what? This is just the space.
The content
not like
creators.
a
That's why I
leftist,
specified
like,
the content
oriented thing.
creators. There's a thing where leftists that I've observed, maybe it's wrong, maybe this is just a false observation that I have. It's very
Bias.
possible, but most of the leftist streamers that I see, their content consists of pulling up a right-wing thing and then dunking on it over and over again. That's what they do. And it's good money. Their audience gets a kick out of it. There's nothing wrong with it, right? If that's what they want to do. There's nothing there's no bad side. It's
Have
just
you met
I don't find that
Chud
interesting.
Logic?
Huh?
Have you met Chud Logic by any chance?
Yeah, I've met Chud Logic.
Okay.
I think she's taking issue with the idea that you're suggesting that's an exclusively left-wing phenomenon.
It's not. But
Yeah.
but there are more leftists in this space than there are conservatives. So, as content creators in Twitch and YouTube, well, maybe not YouTube. I'm not very familiar
Okay.
with YouTube, but Twitch.
So what? Just for my edification, what exactly is the complaint that we're on right now?
That I criticize the left too much and the right not enough. Is that an accurate?
Yeah, so what I said was this pivoted off an observation I made. I said that Whick gives an undeserved charity and benefit of the doubt to the Republican Party and the Western conservative movement that they don't deserve, while simultaneously holding the left and Democrats to a much higher performative and ethical standard than the right, which thwarts progress.
With respect to anything in particular, I don't inherently disagree. I'm just curious as to where you're going with this. Like, what do you have particularly in mind when you say that?
Well, we then started to like pivot off on specific things. So like Whick responded, he said he actually kind of conceded to it that he does, but the reason that he does is because he feels, number one, he has no sway over conservatives, and number two, he feels like morally compelled to, since he is on the left, in his estimation, to hold them to a higher standard since the left is already criticizing the right. So
Whick,
somebody has to criticize the left.
You're on the left in your estimation?
I do think so. I'm the center left, but I'm not a Marxist Leninist by any means, right?
Well, neither am I. But I'm just curious. What does that mean to you?
So when it comes to what policies I support, if you go down the board, most of them are pretty progressive policies. Universal basic income, Medicare for all, some form of kind of like a systemic restructuring of the police. I'm not a defund the police guy, but I am a reform guy when it comes to the police. I think there's systemic issues throughout this country that absolutely, with policing especially, that absolutely have racial biased outcomes, and they need to be addressed. Let's see, what are free speech? I think that's kind of a left issue, but a lot of people would disagree with me, so I'll just cede that one for now. Yeah, when it comes to policies I support, I don't know if I could think of a right-wing one, right?
Yeah.
And for whatever it's worth, I believe you.
Yeah,
in terms of policies, and again, this is what I said earlier. I told Whick very early on to like spark the panel up that he's a conservative enabler, and I think that you can be that while supporting all these leftists or like I wouldn't call them leftist policies. I would call them democratic policies, right? They're left of conservatism, okay? But I think you can absolutely be a conservative enabler, especially as a content creator, while still believing in those things. And we're now talking about the way that Whick's rhetoric and the way that he chooses to form his content creates, well, we're trying to build the narrative for him, basically.
Okay, in what specific respect is he enabling conservatives?
Whew, we just talked about the
But what is he enabling them to do?
So I can give some examples just based on my
Please.
experiences with Whick. So for me, and this is the ongoing tension between Whick and I that I think enables conservatism in particular, which is Whick has a very high threshold for institutional change and reform. Same thing with norms as well. And I would argue that in the United States in particular, I can't speak to Canada, but conservatives abuse, exploit, twist, and break norms for their own political expediency. And it's paid dividends here in the United States. But Whick doesn't want the left or Democrats to change, reform, twist, or bend or break norms as well, because he thinks it'll trigger a race to the bottom. So basically, conservatives can do that. Progressives can't. And by definition, that's just going to enable conservatives to win.
Just to maybe like explain what I mean by that. I think that enabling in this place, do you want to respond, Whick?
Yeah, well, I would
Okay.
I would just
You go.
say that I don't think that's enabling conservatives. I don't like it when conservatives do it either. I'm just observing that we don't want to make it easier for them to do by breaking the norms and further eroding these institutions. Which I guess my most liberal coded position is that I do stand institutions. I think institutions are good. I like the Constitution. I like the Senate.
Oh,
I like these kind of like liberal-esque institutions that we have in America. And I support them, and I don't like to see them eroded by the left or the right.
I'll also say again, just to give the benefit of the doubt, Charity here. I don't mean to suggest that you support conservatives do it. I just mean that you don't support any action which would meaningfully stop them.
Yes, you're not talking about you're not accusing Whick of secretly assenting to conservative values. You're saying that his practice is to their advantage to the disadvantage of the left.
Just to crystallize, I think that as the content creator, obviously Whick is not like he's voting blue, like he considers himself like a leftist. Like when we're talking about enabling
position-wise.
Sorry, on the left.
Yeah, position-wise. Yeah.
Yes, position-wise. He talked about the policies that he supports. So obviously when we're saying enabling conservatives, what I mean is that his content enables furthering conservative narratives that I think are diametrically opposed to the policies that he supports. He, through his content, helps and let's not pretend like this is greater than it is. Like, with all due respect to like Twitch, and like Whick isn't Destiny's size yet, and even Destiny only has so much influence. This is not the end of the world, but we are here as an intervention because we love Whick. And my point is that, like, if you see yourself on the left, enabling conservative talking points that end up pushing politically against those policies that you support is actually, through your centrism, is actually against your own political interests.
Okay, if I may jump in though, very very quickly, yeah. I think that size threshold is actually kind of crucial though, and it kind of makes me wonder why we're having this conversation at this point entirely, because like here's how I think about it. Okay, so
for fun,
there's a tube. Okay, there's a tiny narrow tube that we have to get through in order to get to a not horrendous future for humanity. And we, the left, this giant amorphous blob, are actually this tiny little worm that has these thin little spines poking out. And in order to get through the tube, a bunch of those spines have to break, or we just stay over here and we all die. Some giant bird comes and pecks us or something. I don't know. Don't carry the metaphor too far. What I'm wondering though is, given the scale that we're operating at, and given the fact that there is a general inability right now for leftist content creators, which I don't consider with one at all. In fact, I don't know why he doesn't just say he's a liberal or whatever, because it would just save us a whole lot of time. At this juncture, leftists are doing a very bad job of growing commensurately to the right. It seems to me that you need that thin end of the wedge in order to make inroads into the broader discourse. If we're just going to be talking to each other till the end of time otherwise. And like, I don't disagree. Like, I've had, and I will continue to have arguments with Whick over his positions on things, like, for example, on the Jordan Neely thing.
So you're saying that Whick is an important cog in the machine of the pipeline that leads people towards us?
No, I'm saying he's an unimportant cog in the machine, but what he's doing can nonetheless be.
But until he's important, we should ignore it.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, not until he's not. Until
I
he's
take
important.
issue
what
with
I'm
the
saying is
look.
that what I'm saying is just
Also,
hang on 1 second.
like, I agree
Very
with you,
quickly.
but I don't think that's the point.
No, but I want to reply to Corey quickly. So it's not that we should ignore it while he's important. It's that these are the options you're giving him. Do what we say now and never become important and just kind of flounder.
So you want to Trojan horse him?
Well, so
actually, that yes, unironically, but sorry.
So I would want to respond to that a little bit. So I take your point, President Sunday, but I think the concern is like, so if or when, likely when Whick gets big enough, and there's a large enough crowd, I think there's much less incentive to alter the content, as in like, why at this point, if it got me here, then like, if to use Ruminate's, let's say, language of like, if enabling conservative talking points got me here, well, why not just continue to do that with my much larger platform?
Okay.
Look,
Stop. I need, you guys are, okay. This framing, right, that I enable conservative talking points, I fundamentally disagree with.
That's why I said, I know, that's why I'm saying this is Ruminate's point that I overlap with. I know that's not your position.
Sure.
I know, obviously,
I also want to push back. Like, I think, in fact, it's a great thing that I have conservatives in my audience, and that I have leftists in my audience, and that I have people from all political persuasions feel comfortable in my audience to disagree and argue. I think that's a very leftist value, that you have a diversity of thought in your circle of things. I think that's a very leftist value. Let me finish, and then you can all respond, because this is the dog pile of Whick, right? The intervention.
Well, actually, I was under the impression, with all due respect to everybody here, I was under the impression that this was some kind of panel where you were going to try to what's the word? Persuade Whick to become a leftist as opposed to being a centrist. But it seems here we're presuming he's a leftist.
No,
we're not presuming that.
His practice. He's presuming that. We're not presuming that. Okay. We're trying to we're first trying to bring him to the recognition that he's a centrist, and then bring him to it.
I am just not a centrist. You can say I'm not a leftist, but I am not a centrist.
Why don't we have we established what a centrist is first?
Wait. President Sunday, please. First of all, Whick, you finish. Then I'm gonna talk, and then other people can talk, and that's the order of events. There you go. Whick.
Okay. The second thing, right? That this idea, right? That because I entertain conservative ideas sometimes, right? Or sometimes I push back against certain things that are said on the left. Again, I want to reiterate and repeat what I said before. If I think you are wrong, I am not going to check your political persuasion before I say you are wrong. I'm not going to look to see which side you are on to see if you're wrong or not. If you say something that I think is wrong, because I don't think leftists have every single correct position in the world. I think that there are some positions that leftists
that was your first mistake.
Sure, that leftists tend to have, like some of these positions, I think are just wrong. In some of the ways, and even worse sometimes, some of the ways they try to get to what I think are correct positions, or try to get correct thoughts implemented into the real world, they go about it in a way that I feel is counterproductive to actually getting what they want done. But that's just this isn't me not being on the left or me being center. This is just me like having a fundamental disagreement about various like points, right? Okay, I'm done.
Okay, so first of all, here's the thing. You did this thing again where I already said you want to paint things in a certain way. It's very convenient for you. Nobody said that it's a problem that you have a diversity of opinions in your group, in your audience. What I did say, however, is that a lot of the times you don't just push on leftists. Sometimes a lot of your content is based around pushing against leftist points and bringing in the conservative perspective, which again is fine. But also you have recognized that as far as you're concerned, you're trying to affect leftists more because conservatives are already checked. So please stop painting a narrative that you didn't say those things and you don't believe in them, because you do. Thirdly, and this is the most important
Yeah,
part, this panel will not turn into leftist infighting. So I don't want to do that.
Sweet summer child.
So I don't
Can I
know,
get them to
President Sunday, what pondering sold you the panel on being. But here's the thing. I think we all generally agree that Whick is a centrist, except for Whick. Whick does not agree with that.
Well,
and Whick, shut the fuck up! Okay. And we can go into a discussion
Seriously?
right now to try to figure out if Whick can convince us that he's secretly on the left, which come the fuck on, or we can just agree to disagree and move on to like other points. But the thing is, President Sunday, and this is something that I do agree that the size matters. I also think Whick is an interesting cog in the machine, the same way Destiny is, for example. And I think those cogs matter. However, this is a semi-serious, semi-silly panel. We all like Whick, and we just want to talk to him in a friendly yet content-driven manner about the way that he's a centrist, and we think that's icky. That's all.
Well, if he says he's not a centrist, I think it would be helpful is if we like spend some time actually defining our terms here.
Okay, I think that's great.
Because he clearly understands something different. But
Okay,
then what are we discussing then if we're not willing to do that?
Okay, so pondering is going to say a thing, and then we can all do a bit of defining.
Yeah, so I just wanted to respond very quickly. So again, to be very clear, and I'm not going to speak for Corey, but I think at least Katie and I are on the same page, and I expect Corey and I are on the same page too. Look, I don't have a problem. I think it's great that you do have conservatives in your audience. I was just simply refuting the fact that the claim that you don't have influence over the right. You do have conservative members in your audience. Very vocal, very active members, number one. You're just wrong on that. Number two.
I will cede this point that, sure, I have more influence over the right than I initially thought. Be that as it may, I still think it's smaller than my influence.
Fair, perfectly fair. But at least there is that. Number two, I think it's great that you do outreach and have conversations with people on the right or who are more conservative. I think that is absolutely necessary, particularly in this space. I guess what I would, for me, it just comes down to, it's not even so much of how you engage on your panels, but also, yes, there is that, and how you engage on social media. So for me, it's a two-part thing. I understand, because there are other content creators who have done what you've done, who moderate or try to moderate in a very neutral way, a very diverse panel. And there is a performative element there where you have to give some charity to the other side. But then what do you do off panel? So I don't want to name drop another person, but there's probably one that we can all think of who used to moderate panels. And when he's on the panel, he's reinforcing the right and left, trying to give them both equal time to
Dylan
speak.
Burns.
And yes, thank you. But then on Twitter, what is Dylan Burns? He is not a centrist. He's going after Republicans and conservatives and actually discussing the policies he cares about. See, I believe you when you say that you vote Democrat and that on the policy by policy basis, you have more left-leaning policies. I completely agree. That actually enhances my frustration with you sometimes, because it's like, dude, policies is the shit that matters, not, what cringe 200 Twitter account person said what. That doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Trump matters. DeSantis matters. Marjorie Taylor Greene matters.
But also,
these matter.
As we said, it's not a problem to criticize the left on meaningful things. It's just that a lot of your time on a panel is like basically outrage, like centrists being upset with Twitter lefties, which is not very productive. But the one thing that I did want to say is, before we start doing the definitions that I do think are important for Sunday, I think that I don't think Whick is obligated to create leftist content or like left-leaning content. I just for me, there's a big frustration when I say, oh my God, Whick, you're being so biased right now. Or Whick, you're being so unreasonable right now. And you go like, hey, I'm just trying to bring both sides to the equation. It's like, there are no both sides to this. Yes. Should we do definitions?
I'm whatever. This is y'all's show. I'm just a player in this game.
So
move me.
A
I
key
think-
player, and we couldn't do it without you. I'm pretty sure.
You are
that
you
upon
are the
that's
key to this
central
intervention.
and
you are
holding
the
up the structure.
center of this panel.
You actually
Okay.
are on the screen for me anyway.
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
I got the reference.
Wick,
Um,
how about you define to us what you think a centrist and what you think
Sure.
being on the left is, so we can help you through this.
well, if being on the left or leaning left isn't voting for policies that are leftist, I don't know what else is. A centrist often doesn't vote because both sides are equally bad. And I do take umbrage, right, to this idea that I am a both sideser. I absolutely am not. I think that one side is one that I support with my vote, which again is what actually matters, right? And the other side, right, I just refuse to see them as demons that are terrible people. I just refuse to do that. I don't think they are. And I think that, like, for me, what a centrist would be is someone who right, doesn't take a side, who sits there in the middle, is very wishy-washy, someone who's like both sides are bad, someone who often will just just not weigh in on the discussion, right? That's
Okay.
what I see as a centrist, but I don't do that. I weigh in a lot.
Yeah, I
Sometimes
agree. I think by your definition, you're actually on the right.
On the right? How?
By his definition?
By his definition,
Yeah,
not by
okay,
my definition.
how?
Can you
But
elaborate?
by his definition,
But
absolutely.
yeah, I'm curious too. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, I think when Wick does intervene, it's usually to bring in a right-winging perspective, and it is to enforce and support that perspective. And I also think that whenever he intervenes to criticize the left, it's usually again to discredit a very like lukewarm take that is given as like a very basic progressive outlook. And maybe Wick thinks that those things are protected because of his vote. But the thing is, other people that hear the content also vote. And like, if somebody made a good leftist point, and then you discredit it by saying that all leftists see conservatives as demons, and now this person is less likely to listen to leftists in the future, because I don't see conservatives as demons. I don't think Pondering, or I don't know about President Sunday, but like I know Corey doesn't. I'll let.
Oh, I see all rightists as demons, literal demons possessed by
Okay,
Satan.
good. That's what I thought.
If I may, Katie, if I may,
yeah, sure.
just on this point. So on this, the reason I say this, like, is not maybe because you individually or Josiah or Corey or even President Sunday individually will say that they're demons, right? But a lot of the ways that the general left treats these people is inhuman. It does dehumanize them, and this is my biggest contention with politics across the spectrum, right, left, and center, is that we all talk what we want to be, this ideal world, these great values, but when we behave, we don't live up to those values. So someone who says, I support the poor and the working class, but then doesn't like do anything to help the working class, and in fact shits on them, right, all the time, that isn't someone who supports the working class. I don't care what they say they do. I can observe what they actually do. And so I think it's important to combat the narrative that a lot of right people see, right? A lot of right people believe. They literally believe that the left hates them and wants them gone, right? And so to combat that, I make a point of saying, I don't think you're demons. You're welcome in my space.
Yes,
I think
you're one of the good ones. But here's the thing. You throw us under the bus when I don't think they're demons, and Pondering doesn't think they're demons, and Corey doesn't think they're demons. But you say, I'm different than the general left, which again is interesting because you say they treat them as inhuman. And I'd argue that some of the things that you have allowed to happen on your panels have made trans people feel pretty dehumanized, have made mentally ill people feel pretty dehumanized, have made fat people feel pretty dehumanized, have made Black people feel pretty dehumanized, women pretty dehumanized. I was on an all women panel where all the super chats were just shitting on the girls, you know? So again, we all dehumanize each other and treat each other badly, especially online. And you focus it in as like a leftist issue with how leftists treat conservatives like demons. And you even preface it by saying, I don't see you like demons. I understand your perspective. And it's like, I understand the conservative perspective too. I just disagree with it without being wishy-washy about it.
Well, again, what conservative position do I agree with?
That is not what I said, Whick.
My frustration, right? And maybe this is a miscommunication, right? But my frustration is that I feel gaslit and strawman when people say things like, instead of being wishy-washy, I fundamentally and unequivocally disagree with the right on this. But I fundamentally and unequivocally disagree with the right on a lot. I think my most right-coded kind of position, and I was thinking about this last night, right?
Okay, so I think there's two conversations happening simultaneously here, and they're confusing each other. There's one where we're disputing as to whether or not Whick is quote unquote on the left and has some kind of obligation to not disadvantage the left in his platforming and like how he manages his channel and so on and so forth.
Which I don't think he does.
And then on the other hand, we're accusing him, sort of presuming that he does have some kind of obligation of doing things in a way that is contra, I guess, the leftist values of this particular slate. So we need to pick one of those, because we're doing both at once, and the conversation is becoming a little bit.
I can tell you why I think that is. And Whick, you tell me if I'm wrong. Is it possible that if you felt like you were on the left and then we managed to like convince you that you're doing things to like embolden the right, that would make you feel like you're not standing up to your own like ethical values? Because I think that's what it is.
Let me 1 second. $5 from Matt Honeybee to see, as a fat person, your panels have never made me feel dehumanized. Katie, don't speak for all of us. Love you. Well, thank you. Right? I mean, feelings are valid. I won't
guarantee you that.
Right? I won't.
Whick has many fat friends.
Look, look. I'm not a spring chicken, right? I got a little junk in the trunk, as I say.
I'm very happy that some fat people don't feel dehumanized by Whick talking about how we should bully fat people.
So there is $5 from 𝕾𝖎𝖙 to say $5 to not let them convince you of anything and to hold your position firm? ? Well, maybe if you were more former with that statement and didn't phrase it as a question, right? And didn't demonstrate.
I knew it would come down to bribes. I knew it. I knew it.
Look, at the end of the day, to what you said, Katie, specifically about that you think that one of the reasons I am being stubborn is that by accepting the criticism that I'm emboldening right-wing actors, that I would feel it would be violating my ethical values. Let's consider that, because I want to take it seriously. Yes, if you can demonstrate to me that through my actions that I have given, that I have caused right-wing positions to take prominence, I would feel bad. I would feel guilty for that. But at the same time, how I'm acting has to be on a values basis. And one of my values is to give a voice to everyone who wants to speak, right? To everyone who wants to speak. No one should be without a voice. And I think that if by upholding that value, it ends up that the right wing is stronger, that sucks. But it would be, I would be violating my values either way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, see, that's why you're a liberal, not a centrist or a leftist. But in any case, what I was going to just jump in very quickly and say then is, I mean, find conditions if you're a channel of such a threshold where we can actually track like specific instances where you are contributing to specific right-wing figures actually concretely benefiting. I think what they're criticizing you for, though, for Whick is not that you have done this, but that you're engaging in activities which, once you meet that threshold, once you're at like the size of like a Destiny or a 𝕻𝖎 or somebody else, I guess just very two different sizes. But once you're of a significant size, that these practices will have that effect. So you can look at like larger channels like Destiny and see that like certain things that he's done have directed audience flow to some pretty radical figures, radical in some of the worst ways that they wouldn't have had otherwise. It's a questionable whether or not that actually leads to the success of those particular communities in mainline politics, but it's definitely a possibility that's worth taking seriously. I think for myself, the issue I'm running into here with the premise of this whole conversation is that I'm not convinced that Whick is sort of on side with you guys in like a factional sense, such that he actually has any obligation to take your ends into account. So if he's saying that his actual values are just absolute fairness to the point of Armageddon, like Rorschach, just really gay liberal one, I mean that's what he is.
Yes,
So,
the premise of the thing is that we're his friends and we don't like that he's a liberal.
I would agree. Like
that's the premise.
I would totally agree. Whick is not obligated to anyone but himself. And however he wants to, the content that he wants to create, totally up to him. He has, at least from this is my perspective, zero obligation. He's not even obligated to like converse with me at all whatsoever. But the question I would have, just out of curiosity, of like, let's say we get to the point, we probably never will, but let's say we have like perfect metrics on like the audience that you have. I'm curious, like, so in terms of like, let's say you got to the point of like, now that your audience is like 100% like they vote conservative or like Republican, I guess, to put it more in your domain in the United States. Would that affect your content moving forward? As in, like, if you had that knowledge, I understand.
Well, yeah, we're talking about audience capture, right?
Yeah,
like, if I knew let's say all my audience would stop watching me or be likely to stop watching me if I stopped promoting. I don't know how much effect that would have on me. I don't have these metrics. It wouldn't be zero, right? There's obviously pressures and societal pressures that influence people, right? To deny that would just be foolish.
Well, I mean, it might legitimately be zero, though. Like, there may literally be a threshold beyond which it actually does have no effect. Like, there are these little bubbles where what happens within them is basically indifferent to what happens without them. I think there's a certain...
Oh, we're talking about audience capture, though. Like, so if you know your audience will, leans a certain way, you are incentivized to, pander to your audience a little bit. $5 from 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙.
No, but I'm speaking to that in particular.
$5,
like, I think there's
$5 from 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙 to say you don't owe the left anything, Whick. You needing to be held accountable for the emboldening of right-wing ideas is not a valid criticism, in my opinion. Well, thank you, but this I do owe my values and principles something, and my values and principles I consider are left-leaning for the most part.
So right there. So it's funny. So the reason I was partially distracted is Kilo and I were DMing back and forth because he has some pretty good criticisms of us on the panel. But what I was going to say is it's so interesting, and I figured that this would be the case, that Corey, Katie, President Sunday, and I would be at least in the ballpark of the same area, but that we would come at this from different vectors, because I actually disagree with Corey. I think Whick does have an obligation in his content creation, a moral obligation, to be commensurate with his values. And as I was saying earlier,
I don't think he does.
I do. And here's what I mean. So he said earlier, and this has long been my suspicion of Whick, when it comes to matters of substantive policy in the United States, of which Whick is a citizen, he votes with the leftist proxy in power, which is the Democrats, and that matters. He favors Democratic policy position. That matters. But the second part of that is, if he's going to be a political commentator, I think, much like Destiny famously says, you have an obligation to live your principles, and Whick himself says it too. He has an obligation to espouse those principles. Now, he can get creative with how he does it. Again, I look at somebody like Dylan Burns, since President Sunday brought him up earlier. Dylan Burns, I think, is a progressive who lives and espouses progressive values. He doesn't do it all the time. Like when he moderates discussions with, far right wingers, and so he can set them aside temporarily, but he makes sure that in his activism, when he's not moderating discussion, he makes it abundantly clear.
Okay.
The right and left are not equally bad. The left is better than the right.
I am still missing this. What in my social media activism that you are aware leads you to this position that I am not on the left, or that I
wait, he will answer that.
Because you criticize, in my view, now I haven't reviewed your Twitter page in forever, but when I see you opine things or like offer a political position, it's usually to criticize the left or the left. So I think you and I got into it in a DM once where it was actually President Sunday, as a matter of fact. He said something about Putin, killing Putin or something. I can't remember what it was. And you criticized that. And there was like a back and forth there. That was an easy example.
Oh, assassinating world leaders? Generally against it. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Whick is very respectable politics. Again, he's a liberal.
Right.
Okay, whoa. Is assassinating world leaders a leftist position?
No.
Okay, then this isn't a leftist thing.
I think that's a pragmatic decision. I don't think that's one way or the other.
So, but there are others.
I think if you were to ask Whick, hey, do you think it's appropriate to assassinate Hitler while World War II is going on, he'd probably say yes.
Right, and so that's the other thing I was going to point out. Let me just give a couple more examples, then we'll get to that right there.
$2 from Testicle Johnson say, "Why do you hate America?"
Yeah, Whick. Why do you hate America?
Sucks.
I don't know who he was. I don't know who he was posing that question
why do you hate America, Whick?
Well, President Sunday's the Canadian, so
okay.
It must be him.
Carry
but so what I was going to say was, like, when you and
that means I hate Canada. I don't hate America.
Oh, fair enough. When we sparred, Whick, for the first time, you were also criticizing me, a leftist, a progressive as well. I only ever see you. Maybe I'm wrong, but when your tweets pop up into my feed, when it's politically substantive, when there's a commentary involved, it's to stand the more conservative position.
In the two examples that you gave me was one where I was criticizing Sunday over something, which
over killing a far right, tyrannical.
Yeah,
leader.
I'm against killing people in general. Like that is
but
I don't think that's standing the conservative position. Like, see this example, right? And then the other example is where we disagreed substantively. Me disagreeing with you, right? I think it was on the filibuster, right? Yes. In that instance, I thought what the Democrats were advocating for was foolish and unwise. And yes, I criticized them.
So, Whick, well then, listen, I understand, and maybe I should have come armed with more examples. I'll own that. But let me just ask you bluntly. If I were to go, at the end of this conversation, if I dedicate the time to go through your feed and find out where you offer a political opinion, are you going to look me in the eye and tell me, yeah, most of the time I'm standing the leftist position against a conservative?
I'm
betting the answer is a fuck no.
No,
I'm betting the answer is a no.
I need to interject.
Just real quick, to answer his question, I don't know so how I engage with Twitter. Let me give you guys a rundown. I go through my phone, I scroll.
Make sure that porn is minimized.
That's fine. I say that's dumb. Tweet something out about it.
Yes,
that's funny. Tweet something out about it. Oh, that's silly. Tweet something out. I'm usually in my bed, like in my boxers, right? I don't know. Okay.
What other tabs are open on your phone? But
yeah, really. Yeah,
I'd like to comment on something, if you don't mind. Whick, I think that if you did this experiment with Ruminate, what you'd find is that a lot of the times you and him would get into arguments where you'd go, is this a leftist position now to murder people? And it doesn't matter how President Sunday provided context to this and how Ruminate provided context to this. You still continue with certain framings, especially with leftist topics or stuff that you think are leftist or that you're keen to put a leftist perspective on, that you don't do with conservatism. It was very frustrating that your immediate reaction was like, is murdering people leftist progressive now? It's not. And you know that, except that you don't know that. And that's the frustrating part. I think you can't tell when something is a leftist take and when something is a conservative take, which is what I meant at the beginning with the cut a liberal and a fascist bleed type of thing. I don't think you realize that some of the stuff that you support are conservative positions. I don't think you understand that. And just to
I
one
don't.
more sentence.
I'm agreeing with you. I don't understand how not wanting world leaders to be assassinated is a conservative position.
Okay. And there are many people on this panel that would talk to you about that.
Hang on 1 sec. One sec here. I've got a faintly similar background culturally as Whick. So I have a sense of where he's coming from with this. When he's saying, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Whick, when he's saying he's not in favor of Putin being assassinated, he's not saying he's in favor of not using any and all means necessary to stop a genocidal or a warmongering maniac from doing what he's doing. I think he's coming from sort of a background where there is simultaneously a downgrading of the significance of death and an upgrading of it in certain particular cases. So if you're from like a religious conservative background, specifically a Christian one, you will tend to regard people dying within a different light as somebody who comes from a secular background. So if you kill somebody who's bad, you've damned that person to eternal torment or whatever. Whereas somebody good or innocent is killed, that simply doesn't happen. And so how you value things changes a little bit. You will tend to be more hostile towards deliberate killing than towards a passive attitude to other wrongs, even involving killing, sort of presently going on. And so my suspicion is that he's not taking the stance of, oh, we should be fair to Putin. My suspicion is that he's viewing Putin as a human being, and he has a reflexive revulsion towards seeking the destruction of another human being. Am I understanding you?
I think that yes and no. So to be clear, right, on my stance on this,
And then
I think that while yes, Putin needs to be stopped, right, and if the only way possible, right, if it was absolutely necessary to stop him with that, then maybe. But I don't think it is. I don't think it is at all. And in fact, I think by trying to do that, there is such risk. Normalizing the idea that if a world leader is bad enough, we can kill them, it has ramifications and consequences well beyond the specific situation that we need to take into to account. Systemic, right? When we talk about what's systemic, this is definitely a systemic thing.
Okay, you're not
right?
You're not wrong, but this is where I would say that I think it's pretty inaccurate to say that you're a leftist, Whick, and that doesn't mean you're a bad human or something.
Maybe
some people will disagree, but like when I think centrist or when I think liberal or whatever, I think of somebody who is fundamentally rooted in the current liberal structure. Their point of reference for right or wrong is what maintains that structure, what is beneficial for that structure, or what conduces to the health of that structure. And there is some merit to that, actually. There are things that liberal structures do well that other structures do not. However, when I think of the term leftist, I don't think of someone who has nice values as opposed to mean values. I think of somebody who has a specifically critical attitude towards the very structures that you have bluntly a conservative attitude towards. Not a conservative attitude in the sense of like a Nick Fuentes or like a Ted Cruz or somebody, but conservative in the sense that that's the fortress you sort of return to.
My most conservative coded or liberal coded position is I do stand institutions. Yes, I think institutions that we have in America. $6,
That's not
£6
liberal.
From Duval to say this is no true Scots mending of the left is ridiculous. Not everything right of Bernie Sanders is conservatives. FFS, complete delusion by leftists. Thank you for the £6.
Okay, but that's not liberal or conservative coded. That is like a conservative attitude towards a liberal system, which is fine. I think what's frustrating though is these people here are treating you as if you're a leftist and therefore you have some kind of onus to advocate as a leftist.
Sunday, we've said this multiple times that we don't do this. I don't understand why you keep saying that.
Well,
you're
ruminating
wrong. Is doing that. Okay, sorry. I want to say something very quickly, and then I want to let Corey talk. Whick, I disagree with Sunday on this. I have some liberal blood left in me, and I also stand institutions in an unhealthy way. However, I think that the take that you just gave about like how it's complicated and we don't want to allow certain things, and we like, how do we determine what's a bad enough leader, when is it appropriate to assassinate someone, and all that stuff, I think that's a valid, interesting, important conversation to have. That is a completely, and I know this doesn't fit into a tweet, but I think that one is a much more interesting thing than just going, is it a leftist take to murder people now? And that's what I mean. It's this constant framing of like, oh, this leftist position is completely ridiculous and absurd, when you have literally said yourself, I can see a certain situation where I would support the assassination of Putin. That's all that I was asking. So if you can have that nuanced discussion, and you can have more of those nuanced discussions,
but the reason
I would change my mind
to respond.
But the problem is you rarely do.
To respond. Yes. Okay. The reason I frame it like that is because the situation where, or the circumstances in which I would think it's okay are, I think, fundamentally different than what a lot of people are espousing in social media that think it's okay, right? I think to differentiate my side, like, the circumstances are so specific and so far, and we're so far from them at the present point in time, right, that I don't think it's even worth mentioning or discussing. I think there's no value to discussing it, right? And so this is where we fundamentally disagree. And the reason I push back in the way I do and frame these things is perhaps to shed some light on how other people were seeing this conversation, right? When other people look in on this and they hear you thinking, hey, we should assassinate world leaders, they think that they come to conclusions, right?
I think sometimes you color the conversations. And I can give you a specific example, unless Corey, you've been waiting a while. Do you want to go, or?
Well, and if you, by all means, go for it. Okay, it's your show.
I just to give you the example, when you and I were on Lilo and Stitch, right? You specifically
Adam and Stitch. Okay, Lilo and Stitch.
I call them Lilo and Stitch.
Fair enough.
You specifically very early on said that, like, unlike me, you think we should humanize people. And I never said we should dehumanize people. That wasn't even my argument. That was just like a regular, like, straw manning of my position that you tend to do when you project what you think leftism is onto me. But from that moment on, I had to deal with their entire super chats telling me, how is this crazy bitch thinking dehumanizing people is okay? Which is something that never even left my lips. But your framing of it was so appealing to the conservative audience that once you did that, to me, you have now made everyone even less likely to listen to very valid points that I was making, in my opinion. Okay.
Well, I
mean, I think that's a good example of you doing that.
If I may, though, Katie, if he's appealing, if he's appealing to an already conservative audience that already thinks that, that would suggest that actually the cause is the audience, not Whick in that case.
Yes,
he's not making it worse for you. That's the read of the audience on you. And Whick is just in agreement.
Whick frames things, especially with leftists, in a certain way. And Whick has claims that he has an ethical obligation to himself to not do that dishonestly.
I guess I'm just still confused. Are we?
I know.
Is this no? But is this an intervention in the sense of trying to convince Whick that he needs to do things differently, or are we just accusing him of being a bad person? Because one of these is helpful.
Not a bad person. No,
but she just said dishonestly.
Are you Whick right now? Like, what's happening?
No, I'm not. I fight with Whick virtually every time I talk to him.
It's true. we fight a lot.
And I'm gonna. I wish that I was fighting with him here because he's categorically not a leftist. I thought that would have been an interesting conversation to have.
Then have it.
I think
We're not
but every time I try to, like frankly, Katie, like you start telling everybody to shut the fuck up, and then you start going over a litany of wrongs that he's done you. Like I don't know where to go with this.
Okay, I'm not gonna turn this into a weird like you picking fights with people.
But I'm not picking fights with people. I just the way this conversation is going. I don't know where we're.
Well, I find it interesting that
no. Sorry, Corey.
Go ahead. Yeah,
please.
go ahead.
if you're uncomfortable with this conversation, you can just leave.
I'm perfectly comfortable with this conversation, but like,
Good.
what happens? Here's what happens though if everybody leaves just because. I don't know, Kate. Like, what if we turn this to you for a second?
No,
do you think
this
is good?
Here. It's very curious. Like, so I don't know how, based on what it transpired, how anyone could come to the conclusion that any of us here think Whick is a bad person. Like, I think we made it clear from the. I understand you probably went.
Okay, I don't really care about that, with all due respect. So what?
But you made that, or at least you.
Don't worry about it.
Put it up in the air like this is an open question on what we believe.
Just forget and move on. So
I am not interested in a meta conversation about this conversation.
I'm not making a meta conversation about this conversation.
You are.
No, what I'm actually going to say is that I think in a very serious way, what you're accusing Whick of actually applies pretty strongly to you.
That's great. And you can host a panel with me where you criticize me about that. If you
I don't need to. You dug your grave by yourself without my help.
What?
I said you're digging your grave by yourself perfectly efficiently without my help. I don't need to.
Thank you. If you don't want to talk about Whick, please leave. If you can't and you only want to talk about me, I'll make you leave. How about that?
I don't particularly want to talk about you. However, if we're going to be accusing Whick of assisting the right, I think some of the stuff that you're doing is actually feeding into the image you're accusing him of fostering about the left.
That's completely fine, and I think that's valid. However, I do not want to have a conversation with you about that right now.
All right, just a heads up for the rest of the crew here. If she kicks me, I will have you on my stream at your pleasure.
Okay, but please don't get kicked. I can tell you at this point, I want to go through. And that's what I was doing now. But Whick, you do so much shit posting. I'm scrolling for fucking days. I found a couple of examples about City Bike Karen, like where it's just
wait. The City Bike Karen, right?
And then the pride flag.
No, one at a time. What about it? City Bike Karen? Do you think that was me criticizing the left?
No, that was the closest thing to a political thing that I have found recently. That's why I'm saying I'm scrolling.
There is a lot of just shit posts and thirst traps. That's true.
Yeah, I was like, that's what I was trying to do.
That's what I usually use Twitter for.
Was my audio cutting?
That's weird.
No, we can hear you, President Sunday. So this is what I'll say for this particular tangent, and then I'm interested in what in President Sunday's Whick related tangent. I'll just say this: what I'm going to do, Whick, is I'm going to dedicate some time to go back and look through political tweets that you've made where you have a back and forth or you retweet or quote tweet, and it's like not a thirst trap or a shit post. It's political in nature. Because I'm willing to bet that in the overwhelming decisive majority, you are taking the more conservative or right-wing stance against a center. I think you're more likely to criticize another leftist content creator than Michael Knowles, Ben Shapiro, whoever else. That's
I don't follow the right-wing creators, so that's probably just true. I am following left-wing creators for the most part, and so that's who I see pop up in my feed.
Fair enough.
If I'm going to fight with anyone,
that creates a pattern in your production, right?
Well, why would I follow like Ben Shapiro or something?
Why not?
I'm just asking if you realize that obviously creates a pattern.
I mean, like, what do you mean by that? First of all, 11 pounds from Dehumanization to say, does Katie seriously not understand that there is subtext to your words? Some might call it rhetoric. Her messaging absolutely comes across like she's at the very least okay with rhinoids dying. That's 11 pounds. But like I want to ask, like, what pattern do you think that suggests?
I think Pondering's point is that there's a pattern of you catering to right wing. Am I wrong?
No. My point is that when you, based on some of how you handle your panels, and more particularly how you handle your online presence in general, I think that you give the right wing in the United States an undeserved charity and benefit of the doubt and hold the left to a higher standard. And because I think that you have left-leading values in terms of how you vote, I think you have an obligation to flip that. I think if you do criticize the left from the left, which we all do, how I got into the space at all was me constantly criticizing Destiny from the left as someone else who I think is an ally of the left.
That, dear God.
So I mean, so that's
Katie's. I saw Katie perk up at that. She's like, Destiny on the left? Oh, no.
So that's how, right. I consider Destiny somebody who is a net positive in general to the left compared to the right.
Destiny's on the left, but I'm not on the left.
Wait a minute. I would
Oh,
never,
you can hear it coming out. Oh my God.
I would never in my life
the virus.
ever suggest, as whatever disagreements that Destiny and I have, I would never say or suggest and go out of my way to avoid suggesting that because I disagree with Destiny on certain things like institutions and, how Democrats should fight back against Republicans, I would never suggest that he is effectively a conservative or effectively a Republican. I go out of my way to say Destiny on his worst day is better than somebody like a Michael Knowles or a Ben Shapiro, and they are orders of magnitude apart. What I want from you personally, if you're going to criticize the left, I think you have a responsibility as someone whose policies are left-leaning to make it abundantly clear that when you're talking about, when you're moderating a debate between a flat earther and a round earther, you're not just the centrist who's like, well, there's equal evidence for flat earth. No,
what if it's a cube? That's the
right. You say, no. The evidence is clearly squarely against the flat earther. I'm going to moderate this discussion. I'll try to be as fair as possible, but you don't indulge in false equivalences or exacerbate false equivalences or both sidesism or whataboutism. That's what I want to see from you. And I do think you have a moral obligation to do it. But that's where I stand on the issue.
Good. We can now have President Sunday and Whick understand why they don't agree on whether Whick is on the left.
Katie, can Whick get the last word in on me? I won't
respond.
Of course. Can you respond on that?
Of course.
I just don't think I both sides things. Okay. I just don't. Now on a panel, if like, for example, if I have two conservative leaning people and then one of the conservative leaning people dropped out, and so I only have 2 versus 3, I will put my thumb on the scale to make it more balanced. Absolutely, I will do that. But I don't think that's both siding things. I think that's just trying to create a balanced discussion where both sides have kind of an equal weight. Right.
But Whick, in this example of and to be fair, most discussions about conservatism and progressivism are not as clear cut as earth round, earth flat. But in this example, some of them are, but not all of them. But in this example, imagine if you put your thumb down for flat earth just to make it more fair. It's like there are 2 people for round earth here and 1 flat earther. And it's
reality doesn't need my help. Like, if it's that clear cut,
I don't know about
reality does not need, reality will be reality regardless of what, happens on my panel, right? You don't think so? You don't think that regardless of where we land on if I did host a flat earth versus round earth panel, regardless, even if the flat earth trounced the round side, right? That suddenly that the earth will be flat now?
No, I think the point is that the position will be able to gain currency with a vulnerable audience.
My audience ain't vulnerable. My audience is not vulnerable.
I understand you think that's the logic of the critique, though.
Fair enough.
That's why I brought up the hypothetical of again, if you had access to information, or rather to use sort of Pondering's Twitter example, like how you engage on Twitter. I'm curious as to how you respond. I understand you might not know of you are curating, you just have pretty much all Republicans follow you on Twitter, and now all your viewers, you poll them and they all vote a certain way, not the same as you, basically. Would you feel that you need to modify something, or it's you would want to run with that?
If I found out, right, that all my followers, or a majority of my followers even, were right-leaning, it would influence me. It would. I mean, it would have some influence. But just because something has an influence doesn't mean it actually will change my behavior.
Influence how? As in you want to lean more into it or less into it?
I think that, well, what I like to do is challenge people's beliefs. So I would actually probably start challenging a lot more right-leaning beliefs. Because I think most of my audience is not on the right. I think most of my audience, at least, is center-left or left. I think that's the majority of Twitch and YouTube audiences that I have. I could be wrong, though. I don't have metrics for this. This is just my intuition, right? So I like to challenge their beliefs, and so I do so by asking questions.
Think you're left. That's the issue.
Huh? Say one more time. I didn't hear
you're
you.
On the left.
Yeah, I think my values are on the left. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm saying that your metric of evaluating whether someone is on the left or not is skewed by the fact that, like, maybe President, you can now go into this of like, I don't consider Whick on the left, right? So
Sure. But what
Well, I
values
suppose my
have are-
immediate question, Whick, is why is it important to you to be considered on the left?
Why is it? I guess it's important to me because it's how I feel reality is, and reality is important to me. So again, if we don't consider someone who, again, legislatively and votes blue, right? Electorally votes for Democrats across the board, right? I don't think I've ever voted for a Republican. Someone who advocates for very progressive positions in some cases, some cases a little less progressive positions, but in general. So if we don't consider that an ally on the left, then what are we doing? Like, that's why it's important. Like, this idea that unless you unless
No, I
purely
fully
host
hear.
all
No,
my
no, no,
297 leftist values,
Sure.
and you only agree with 290 of them, that you are not on the left. What are we doing? Right? That's why this is important to me.
Well, the issue isn't that you particularly are not on the left. The issue is that when we're talking about the left, we're talking about like specific types of goals and values and different things you advocate for against other people. And so one of the reasons why people are frustrated when people self-characterize as being on the left when they don't hold those things is because it seriously dilutes the general understanding of what these things actually stand for, which in turn sort of limits the range of political possibilities that we're even considering.
Some political possibilities, I want to limit their range, right? I think they're bad, and I don't want them implemented.
No, I understand what you're saying, but like we're talking like a little bit less than like kill police officers and overthrow the government to institute Leninist communism.
Did you not see my moderate versus my centrism panel? Like that's worth a watch.
I didn't.
Can I interject?
It's your show.
Because you guys were having a back and forth, so Whick, I think that we can say that some liberals, and they absolutely do, well, not centrists, but some liberals absolutely who vote Democrat. I think you're a Democrat, okay? You obviously are. That doesn't make you on the left. But the thing is,
Whick, what is the left? Hang on. What is the left? What do you mean by that?
Left to center. So anyone who
left to center.
Yeah, left to center. Like seriously, there's
not how do you self-describe? What is the left? What makes something left of center?
Left to center,
as opposed to a right of center.
Generally it's policies that are designed to implement some sort of change, right? It's the opposite of conservative, which wants to conserve certain things, right?
Well, not necessarily, right? Because like a conservative or right winger may very much want to change the ethnic makeup of a country.
But it's usually in a backwards direction. You know, it's usually regressive, right? So they do want to overturn things like Roe v. Wade. That was a change they wanted to implement, but it was a regression to the tradition, or what they saw as tradition, right? Is that incorrect?
No, I'm waiting for Katie. Looks like she was about to do something.
Oh no.
So yeah, I think that like in general, like, so I wouldn't say like,
okay, but like you're so when you say
ethno-nationalism, I don't think is a conservative position.
No,
I think it's an ethno-nationalistic position.
I understand, but okay, so we're not talking about like. Change doesn't work on your understanding though, because you're still characterizing yourself as center left. There seems to be some kind of scalar order going on here.
Yeah,
right?
because it's
difference
a spectrum,
of degree,
right?
Let
me explain, right? So it's a spectrum. So the reason I say I'm center left is because I don't want to change everything, right? Not all of my positions are for change, right? Some of my positions do want to conserve certain things, like institutions and things like that. Like,
but I don't think that actually describes anybody in particular, because nobody wants to change everything.
Do you guys want to change everything? I don't want to change everything. I'm good
see how
on a
long this
lot
panel
of
there
goes.
is
I might.
Everything, everywhere, all
there
at
does
once.
come a
Yes.
tipping point where you, if you want to change more than me, I think you are more left than me. No?
Well, what if you're like an old school fascist, and what you're aiming for isn't a regression. What you're aiming for is a forward-looking evolution, like of
I understand
of
that, right? That's why it's not
so
just a line here, right? There's a lot to it, right?
But if it's
Because
a,
they are
it's a,
more, I guess fascism is kind of like under my definition of things, and you're gonna hate this, right? It is for change, so it is towards that, but it's in a very authoritarian scale, right? Towards an
Okay,
authoritarian
neo-Nazis
bent,
want
which
to
most
change a
progressives
lot,
don't
but
want.
they're not on the left. Wait,
What?
right?
well,
Neo-Nazis
what are you
want
talking
to
about? It
change a
has
lot.
socialist in the name.
Wick, neo-Nazis want to change quite a bit, okay? There's a lot of changes they want to implement. That does not make them on the left, right? Just because they want more change, more
exactly, because it's not it's not a line where you are just left or just right. It's a depth of field here. It's like a 3D model here, so you can
Multiple
be
axes.
for change, but also in this authoritarian, racist direction. No, you aren't a leftist, right? Because you're a fascist, right? They're different. I'm not saying they're the same, right?
Okay, but
I'm just saying it's a scale. And I think that the people who are advocating for change towards an ethno-state are up here, and the people who are advocating for change towards less racism and stuff are down here. They're very far apart. They're not even the same, so don't get that twisted. But yes.
No, I'm not getting that twisted. But then what I'm asking is, if your definition of the left is anyone who wants more change than
I think
me,
that makes you more left-leaning.
So you're a heliocentrist, essentially.
Heliocentrist.
If I can I'll throw Whick a bone here, because as an American, and I think part of the issue is this, and I fall into this myself. So for modern political parlance, often commentators and politicians will use the left to refer to just a catch-all phrase, just, 2 syllables to refer to anyone who is not a conservative. So liberal, neoliberal, progressive, social democrat, democratic socialist, socialist, communist, like that whole range is on the political left. And so that's something that you hear in a lot of American media, even from politicians. So I know I use it that way very often. And I think that's what Whick means here. He votes Democrats, which is the closest thing to a political proxy that the left has in the United States, that wants more egalitarian and more social equality policies. That's what I think he means. And then people to the left of that who are willing to much more casually bend, break, or twist institutions to affect those egalitarian or social equality outcomes, he considers more left than himself.
Yes.
Okay,
that's
but
what I think.
But the question is, do most people, or is the President Sunday, when you don't consider Whick on the left, are you working from an academic perspective, from your own intuitive understanding of leftism? Just give me a title so I can name it.
Well, I don't think the left is a coherent entity.
Yeah,
when I think on the left, I simply mean that which is opposed to the right, and I don't think Whick is categorically opposed to the right. I think Whick is operating in a space that has different loyalties, not to the right per se, but it's not one of opposition.
Certainly
on specific policies, but then you'll find the same kind of.
I want to agree with something here. If the conservatives have a position I view as correct, I don't oppose them just to oppose them. I'm like, oh no, they're right in this case, right? I can't think of one off the top of my head, right? But if it came to a point where the conservatives were right about an issue, where they were objectively correct, why would I fight that? They're just objectively correct. Just because they're my political opposition normally doesn't mean I can't point out, oh, they're actually right about this.
Well,
Mr. President, to clarify,
if I may, very quickly before you jump in. So I think one of the reasons why I front this by saying I don't think there's a coherent left. I think, and this is again one of the reasons why I think you're actually a centrist, Whick, not a leftist at all. I don't mean that disparagingly. Is that there's this baked-in assumption that the right and the left sort of constitute a holistic representation of all the different voices and interests in society, where like the right accounts for this side of the human experience, the left accounts for this one, and there's actually not a distinction between them. They just differ by degrees on certain things. The reason why I have an issue with that, and why I would say that adopting that position makes you a centrist as opposed to a leftist, why I don't think you can be a centrist and a leftist, is because what's being sort of tacitly assumed there is that the right itself does actually represent a part of the human experience in a very general and sort of encompassing way, when I would argue it's actually a cult of a specific cultural inheritance that is super particular and super narrow, and it's only because of the nature of its claims that it has such wide resistance that you can actually have like a right and left sort of crystallizing in that opposition.
So I don't know if you were here for when I said that the fascists, right, weren't on the right or the left, but there are something else, right? I don't view these things as a dichotomy. Like I don't think that this is a binary thing. So I would agree with you on that. And I'm confused why you think that I think that way, right?
Well, because you're center left. So you're sort of implying a kind of gravity there. It's a shorthand
to describe to people what I am, right? It's a shorthand, and it's not entirely accurate because, and I say this all the time on my panel or on my show. I'm a buffet politician. Let me finish.
But I think
politician. I take a little from this table.
No. I understand what you're saying, and everybody does this. But I think what would be much less obfuscating and would really clarify your position vis-a-vis this panel is if you just said what that actually is, which is a liberal, which you are. Like, you're a partisan of liberal institutions, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that as long as you're circumspect about it.
$5 for 𝕵𝖎𝖏 Steam Tech to say what % of the population do the panelists think are on the left. Well, I don't know. But I would say, right, that I do have some liberal leanings, yes, but I'm not a liberal because I think the liberals are wrong on certain things. I think the liberals get quite a few things wrong.
Wait, I'm sorry. I have to very quickly. You don't think fascism is a right-wing ideology?
Fascism is fascism, right?
Well, right. The right predates fascism, so like you can get into that. But I am curious. What do liberals get wrong, Whick?
Okay, so I think that the fetishization of institutions that they do is incorrect, right? I think a lot of times they do fetishize institutions, where I would say that institutions are a means to an end and not the end thereof. 𝕵𝖎𝖏.
But to push back right away on that, but
just
very,
real
very
quick,
quickly.
𝕵𝖎𝖏 is saying that as if I'm agreeing with him. No, I think that institutions, while I don't fetishize them, are important.
Okay, no, I understand, but Whick, so here's where I have to push back immediately.
𝕬𝖎𝖏.
Wait, hang on. So I'm actually going to push back from a right-wing vantage.
Please.
Now, okay? So one of the reasons why you're very much a liberal nonetheless, you have a very literal understanding, it seems to me, of what an institution is. An institution is not just like the police, the state, the government, the judiciary, etc., etc. It can also be like crystallizations of certain types of practice and certain types of norms. So, for example, one of the debates that was had when the right as we understand it today was starting to form was whether or not it was appropriate to suspend liberal values of free speech and free assembly, etc., when you had political parties rising that threatened the stability of that liberal order itself. And the debate really centered around liberals who were insistent that no, we need to let this play out, and wherever the dice fall, they fall. And other people who were insisting that no, we have constitutional measures to suspend this and we need to use that. Otherwise, you will not be able to return to a situation where you can actually facilitate free speech and so on and so forth. And moreover, if you allow people to sort of govern by or sort of to dominate the discussion by way of mob tactics, which a lot of people in online spaces are doing. This is actually the principal reason for the right success online, because they are willing to network with kooks and quacks, and to basically just overwhelmed by sheer numbers by meeting on the point of the lowest common denominator. You actually make it impossible to facilitate free discussion, in fact, because every single person who has a position that is hostile to the positions of those quacks gets flooded and appears to be a kook just because they are the minority in every single situation. You earlier were insisting that, like, wherever it falls. That's what that leads to. That is itself a fetishization of a liberal principle.
I will cede to you that my free speech takes are very liberal, but I'm unapologetic. But
I think they're a fetish. Is the point? They're a fetish. Is the point?
Well, I am not a free speech absolutist, to be clear. But I am much closer to it than almost anyone else.
But hang on. So what's left though?
11 euros.
But I want to pin.
11 euros. 11 euros because I like money. 11 euros. From Duvel. These are euros, not Brit bucks. Apologies, Duvel. When I said pounds earlier, that was my mistake. Does Katie think she's actually left when she has single-handedly converted more people away from leftism than the rest of the world combined? And 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙 for $2. Unmute 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙 this instant. I didn't mute him.
I muted, buddy. Kilo.
Okay.
Kilo's my boy. He's got my back. I muted myself so as not to blurt out.
Okay, but hang on. No. But I want to.
Can I actually engage with this with you?
No,
you're not really engaging with it though.
How am I not engaging with it?
You can, but before you trot out like 50 other points, I wanted to just get in on this one because this was the crux of it. When you insist these massive these outcomes with massive implications for lots and lots of people that may set us on a course that we actually can't return from, that's okay as long as it's arrived at through quote unquote free discussion, which really is just a sieve where the people who are better able to manipulate algorithms and popular ignorance prevail in every single case. You have essentially deified the idea that it's simply right and good in all cases, that just people arguing on an equal plane, that always yields the preferable outcome, even when it's literally preferable by no other metrics than the bare fact that that's what's taking place.
That's just not true. That's
what you said earlier.
Mr. President, or he'll say, no, it doesn't always lead to the preferable outcome, but he'll still stand them anyway.
Yes.
That's also frustrating.
But what's the difference, Whick?
Because I think, right, we can solve a lot of problems, right? We could solve a lot of problems if we took away enough freedom from people. We could make the world a safer place, a better place by metrics alone. But I would not want to live in that world because I value my freedom, right, to do these things, even if they have worse outcomes than it would be if you took away my freedom.
I understand this,
right?
but the last argument we had was you defending the strangling of Jordan Neely on the subway.
This representation, I said that it wasn't murder, it was manslaughter. And guess what? The fucking government agreed with me. That's what he was charged with, because that's what he probably did. It was manslaughter.
Because you don't fetishize institutions.
So what's interesting is this is where I'm a bit out of my depth, because like City Bike Karen and even the Jordan Neely situation, I don't follow that. Like with my politics, it's been more about like the debt ceiling stuff and like broader, civilizational issues. And this is for me, this is where I come at it from a similar vantage point, President Sunday, but about a different set of institutions, because my frustrations, and Whick said it earlier, institutions are a means to an end. Whick, wisest thing that you've said in the past hour, that's absolutely true. If there's anybody watching who thinks institutions are an end of themselves, you've missed the fucking plot. They are not. They are a means to an end, like anything else, which is why, and I always use the Abraham Lincoln example because it's the ultimate gotcha. Everyone always says their favorite president is Abraham Lincoln. That motherfucker bent, broke, and twisted institutions to prosecute the Civil War. He did it. Institutions were not a means to an end. He suspended writ of habeas corpus. He told the Supreme Court to fuck off when they told him not to arrest or to release a political prisoner. Institutions have a little asterisk by them. And if along the way they stop serving righteous ends or become corrupted and exploited by, subversive means, we have a moral obligation to change them. And this gets to my frustration with you, Whick.
I can't tell the difference between you and Ted Cruz, because Ted Cruz would say those exact same words, make those exact same arguments to get rid of the institutions he doesn't.
Do you want to know where the difference is? What's the end, Whick? What's the end? Ted Cruz wants to twist norms. Wait a minute. You just made a charge. You just compared me to Ted Cruz.
I said
you're lucky I love you.
Ted Cruz, yes.
You're lucky I love you. That was the most offensive thing a person has ever said to me ever. Actually, it's not true. Somebody told me once as a compliment that I reminded them of Tucker Carlson. They meant it as a compliment. That was like a deep moment of despair in my life. But anyway, Ted Cruz, here's where you know the difference. If you stop the analysis between me and Ted Cruz at means, then I would understand why you could see that. Well, my God, on some level, both of them want to twist, bend, or change norms. What's the end? Ted Cruz wants to bend, twist, or change norms to get Donald Trump into a second illegal term. Donald Trump lost the election. Wait a minute. I want to bend, twist norms to maximize voter turnout, which would, by the way, would allow and make it easier for conservatives to vote as well. My goals, the goals of the Democratic Party when we want to twist norms, are just more defensible than Ted Cruz's. That's the difference.
But
and
I know
you recognize that.
But the problem with this is when you weaken the institutions, it doesn't just weaken it for your ends, it weakens it for their ends too. It makes it easier for them to enact the changes, the horrific changes and ends that they want to.
Which would be a great... No, hang on. Which would be a fantastic counter argument if they weren't already winning.
Do you think that the right is winning in America?
Yes.
Oh my God!
I have some news for you. They're losing on every front.
They're losing the electoral campaign, but they have policies going forward in every single state.
Tell that to women, dude.
I think
simply
that
because
the
they
right,
propose a policy which has no chance of passing, right? In a lot of these states,
they didn't have no chance of passing. Actually, a lot of them have passed.
I don't know
just Roe v. Wade.
More than that, not a lot of them. There's some.
I don't know if the right is
failing,
winning in aggregate, Whick, but they are winning critical battles. I don't know if they're winning the war because
they aren't winning the war. They haven't been for.
That's why I said, wait a minute. I said I don't know if they're winning the war. I'm not going to commit to President Sunday's position because the war politically is happening on so many fronts. But I can tell you they are winning crucial, critical battles. The Dobbs decision, which overturned Roe v. Wade, people are going to die as a result of that. That is allowing regressive red states to pass 6-week abortion bans, anti-trans legislation, like 500 bills just this legislative session.
Dying.
Say what?
Which will also result in people dying.
Correct.
And moreover, lest we forget, even if we manage to arrest every single one of these, we still have a climate crisis that's going to be accelerating very quickly within our lifetimes, and we will not be able to revert that.
If your answer is to take away the democracy of these states, that is not an answer I'm comfortable with.
The last point I mentioned will actually force us into a situation where we have to take away the democracy of these states either way.
So Whick, I don't know. I don't even think President Sunday, except there with the situation with climate change, and even then he didn't advocate for it, which, by the way, we could potentially avoid that outcome.
No, we're looking at eco-fascism the next few decades. That's the thing I'm worried about.
So here's where I'm confused. You said if we take the democracy away from those states.
You say that there are states which are passing things that you think is going to hurt people and kill people, right? Anti-trans legislation, anti-abortion legislation. Okay. So how do we fix this? What mechanisms would you put in place? Now you like to to keep Roe v. Wade from being overturned. You would like, I assume, what the Democrats wanted to make it a constitutional thing, correct?
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
But in order to facilitate that, there are two things that needed to happen, right? Mm-hmm. One, they needed to get rid of the filibuster because they knew it would be good, or do a carve out.
They didn't have to abolish it. Let's be very clear. They could have done
to weaken the filibuster. To weaken the filibuster to do that, right? That is incredibly dangerous. One of the things that has been, I know we're going to disagree with this again, right? But one of the things that was able to stop a lot of Trump's legislation, a lot of the right-wing legislation during the Trump leads, was the filibuster.
I know that. I've made that argument.
So when we carve out these carve-outs for them, right, then obviously it makes it easier for the right to do the same when they want in. Now, again, you said, well, the right will just do it anyway. That's a common talking point. They didn't in 2017.
They
When
didn't have
Trump,
to in 2017.
Oh my God. When Trump was like,
Whick,
get rid of the
Whick,
filibuster,
Whick,
carve out the
Whick,
filibuster. We
Whick.
got to get rid of this filibuster.
I
We
need
don't
to
want
say
it in here.
something very
You know what
quickly.
Mitch
Hang on,
McConnell
Katie,
did?
let
He said
Josiah
no.
speak.
Wick, this is okay. The Republicans' priorities in 2017: tax cut, $2 trillion tax cuts. What they didn't need to they didn't need a filibuster carve out to do it. Number one, and two, cramming a young conservative judge in every federal judiciary vacancy they could find. They didn't need to do it. That's where I need you to understand. You're assuming that Republicans and Democrats have a mutually exclusive but comparably robust legislative agenda. They don't. Democrats want to pass shit about climate change, wage gaps, tax reform, whatever. Republicans, they want to get young conservative judges and cut taxes for the rich, and then otherwise they play defensive.
And stop
All they
Democrats.
do. Correct.
Didn't Mitch
You have to
literally
accept
say
that.
their entire point is
Was
just
to make
block
Obama a one-term president, and they said the same thing for Biden as well. I need you to get that.
And we said the same thing for Trump.
I need to say something very
No,
quickly.
you do not think there were people out there on the Democratic side and the left-wing side who say we're absolutely going to make Trump a one-term president? Hashtag not my president. You don't think that was happening? See, this is my problem here. And this is why you may, I think mistakenly, see me as attacking the left. Because when you make dumbass statements that when the left is pure and good and free from sin and the right is evil, right?
You said that!
I was saying that!
This is what you were implying when you say
have to
that
say
the
something.
conservatives do nothing but try to make people a one-term president as if we didn't do the exact same thing.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
That was people, not politicians with
minute.
actual power. Jesus fucking Christ.
You don't think the politicians on the left with actual? Oh my God!
I want to say
Wait a
something.
minute. Okay.
No pondering, please. Wick, the fact that you when you looked at pondering and you said that you can't tell pondering from Ted Cruz apart because even though you agree with pondering's policy prescriptions, you still can't tell them apart because they both think they're right, is exactly why you're a centrist liberal. Okay, the fact that you cannot tell these things apart is the fucking issue. Continue.
So, okay, let's clarify a couple of things because there was some hyperbole. Let me state very calmly. I don't think that the left or Democrats are pure and good. I do think they are better by far consistently
I agree.
than the Republican Party.
Absolutely.
And I am stating a fact when I tell you, and I want you to tell me if you agree or disagree. Are you going to sit here and tell me that the Republican Party's political platform, the policies they propose, is as robust and multifaceted and affirmative?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Are they meaningfully different? Like if Democrats want to do 10 things, climate change, voting rights, whatever it is.
Obviously there's a substantive difference between Democrats and Republicans in America. Yep, I agree.
Right, but also in terms of what they want to legislatively accomplish.
That's the difference. The legislative accomplishments.
Okay. So that's what I'm telling you. So when you say, well, the Republicans didn't abolish the filibuster, they didn't need to accomplish what McConnell wanted. Not saying, well, let me finish. Hang on, please. I am not saying, I want to be very clear about this, that Republicans are reckless in their use or abuse of norms. I'm saying they do it very thoughtfully, very calculatedly when they think it gets them a political advantage that they value. The Supreme Court's a great example of it. They did a very specific carve out for a very specific reason, and it paid dividends. They broke a precedent, created a new precedent, broke that precedent in 4 years, and it netted them a 6-3 regressive conservative supermajority on the nation's highest court.
Let's relitigate this because you and I have litigated this. You know what I'm going to say. $20 for no step on snake to say the ends justify the means. In other words, it's okay to use chemical or biological weapons if enemies are evil enough. So we've had this argument before. The reason that McConnell was able to make that carve out for the Supreme Court, one of the reasons he felt comfortable with it and he was able to get it through and get opposition even on his own side to go with it, is because when Harry Reid made that same carve out for President Obama to get some of his appointees in, right? Like, because that norm was broken initially by Democrats. It made it easier, and it weakened this institution, and so it made it easier for Republicans to make further carve-outs. And so what we do if we make further carve-outs is this race to the bottom, who can get there faster. And this is why I stand these institutions, because if we did not do that, if Harry Reid did not engage in that, we would still have.
You know what would happen if Harry Reid hadn't engaged in that? Then President Obama wouldn't have been able to fill a single fucking executive or judicial appointment.
That's not true at all.
Which he is entitled to do under Article 2 of the Constitution. Republicans, to an unprecedented degree, under Mitch McConnell during the Obama administration, blocked or filibustered or invoked cloture for Obama's appointees to an unprecedented degree. Both parties did it, but under Obama, because they wanted to make him a one-term president, literally half the filibusters, blockages, and clotures that had ever occurred in U.S. history happened under one president by Republicans.
And then during Trump's era, that record was broken.
No, it wasn't. No, it was not.
Okay, I'll pull up the numbers. You're just factually wrong.
Okay, just to bring this back to where the conversation initially started.
I'm sorry, real quick, Mr. President. I'm sorry, just to point this out. Right there, great,
Mr.
just a beautiful example of where that's a centrist shift in the burden of proof.
That's not a centrist shift. It's saying, hey, we did this bad thing. Let's not repeat this bad thing.
Republicans did a bad thing, and it was because Democrats did a bad thing. Then when I point out that Republicans did a bad thing, which precipitated the Democrats' bad thing, then you jump in time forward to say, well, Democrats did a bad thing later down the road. That's what I'm saying, dude. It doesn't matter if it's in the past as a predicate or a future response to something.
This is me painting the narrative that is true.
Held to a higher standard. Always. This is
just showing cause and effect. That's not holding one side to the standard. You kicked the ball, it rolled down a hill, and it picked up speed, and now both sides are engaging a race to the bottom. That's not me standing the Republicans. That's observing cause and effect. And you can disagree with me on this, but I think the numbers bear me out on this. That I think that when we weaken these institutions, at least in the state we are in, politically in America, you're that it enables right-wing action.
Okay, but I understand. But Whick, here's the problem: you're equivocating between institutions and manners. Okay, so you're telling the left they need to abide by the rules of a game that the right is already cheating at. That does not make the left win. That only makes the right win. To bring this back though to where the conversation started, because once again, I am thoroughly unconvinced that Whick is on the left, and I don't think he needs to claim to be on the left. I don't know why he's insistent upon it, but
I'm revoking his membership to it officially.
None
on the left.
Canceled. I got
it. No.
Nonetheless, what does have to be said is that, as evidenced even by this panel as well, Whick is also willing to play both ways. So, for us, I don't think the issue should be whether or not Whick himself is fair. I think Whick himself has made himself available, and to the extent that we can, we should avail ourselves of that. Which means I don't think spending extensive amounts of time litigating whether or not his opinions or positions vis-a-vis free speech or the right wing are disadvantageous to the left is really relevant. I think the main thing would be to start using platforms like this, insofar as we're engaging in this on YouTube and Twitch and places like that, to start playing in a similar fashion as our opponents are, which hurts a lot more. I'm not finished speaking with. Not in the sense of cheating, but in the sense of actually having a forceful presence where it's been made available to us to do so.
Okay, may I respond? Are you done speaking?
No.
Okay. So the reason, right, that I want to hold us to a standard is because I think when we violate our standards, when we violate our ethics, right, in order for short-term gains, we end up losing long-term. And I think this is just the fundamental impasse and disagreement.
Hang on. I don't think anybody here disagrees that violating your ethics is bad.
Or just
Josiah doesn't think violating your ethics is good. Josiah is motivated by his ethical values. I would hope.
Maybe. And maybe, you know what? Sunday, I'll give you
it's
that.
It's the Ted Cruz in me.
Poorly.
Probably not.
I'll give that to you. I phrased that poorly.
Well, the reason why I think you phrased that poorly is
but
because you prefaced it by saying we, and I don't think there's a we here. I think you're actually at ethical odds with the people here. They have ethical values, very strong ones that they adhere to very strongly. I think what you're doing though is you're conflating playing by the rules of a system of which you are a partisan with being ethical, and that doesn't follow.
I think that the rules that we have in place legislatively, right, it's not an ethical thing. This is a pragmatic take.
Okay,
right?
so
This
what do
is
you
very,
mean?
just,
What do you mean?
If I may finish, right? I let you finish. Let me finish. Let me explain what I mean by this. Okay, so there's no misunderstandings. It's a pragmatic take. What I have observed over my many years as an old man on this platform, right, is that when we as Democrats, that's to clarify what the we is, when Democrats, right, and I absolutely am a Democrat. That's I think everyone can agree here that I am a Democrat. Big D, right? Whick D, big D, Democrat.
Big D,
okay.
Big D
When
energy.
we do things that violate, right, the institutions and norms, it ends up bad for us because we don't do it as good or as well as the Republicans do. And because we don't do that, when we violate these norms, we lose out because it makes it much easier for them. And they usually wait, and they try to trap us into it. And they're very good at this, right? Say what we will about the Republicans, but they're very, very canny. They've observed this, and they see this happen again and again. They can trick us into opening the door to a thing, and then they'll thin end of the wedge
Okay,
it
so
and
so
just
here's
ram
here's
it
here's
through.
the okay.
And I
so
think
once
that's
again,
a bad thing.
I
and
know,
want
but
to
so
stop
once
it.
again, I understand. But to return to the fetishization point, you say you're making a pragmatic argument, but you're making the outcome of a pragmatic tool universally true in all cases. If people,
in my observation, in no, not all cases, in American political system
in
today,
American,
in the last 50 years,
in American politics,
Yes.
Whick, if people didn't violate norms that once were held with the same fervence as the ones that you're talking about, black people and women would still not be able to vote.
and if we were trying, right, to change those norms, how would we do that? We would do it legislatively, right?
by
so
violating
women,
them, because
as I understand it,
no, because Whick, we who have the institutional power to change those norms are not incentivized to do so.
but that's how black people got the vote. You realize that, right? It was voted in. The Voting Rights Act was voted in.
What precipitated that?
There was political activism, but that didn't
We didn't
mean
just
shit
change our minds,
if we
Whick.
don't win the vote.
Whick, white people didn't get together, have a big tea time, and just decide out of the goodness of their hearts to give other people with contrary interests the right to vote. That's silly.
No,
Correct.
but it's also
And-
silly to think that all that happened was some riots and then suddenly we caved in. That's absolutely not what happened.
No.
So
No, it
Tessica
wasn't just
Johnson
riots.
was says, which
Multifaceted
president would you
approach.
kiss on the mouth? All of them.
Okay, so this is Ted Cruz here. Whick. I don't know my Ted Cruz accent. I sound like Lindsey Graham there for a minute.
Yeah, I
but
get some tea. You kids play nice.
But President Sunday's point, it's a multifaceted approach. Yes, activism and persuasive rhetoric, that plays a huge component. But the idea that that's going to get us all the way there, or, let's draw it back here for a minute, because he pointed out the civil rights movement. The issues facing the civil rights movement, like Jim Crow and segregation, these were 80 years of vestiges of slavery. So we got to take it back even more. I gave you the Abraham Lincoln example about how he broke norms to prosecute the Civil War. But how was slavery abolished? Was it done through referendum, through popular vote? No, it was after we kicked the conservative South's ass, we told them, you're done with slavery. You don't get a choice. We're not debating this anymore. We spent 80 years since the founding of this country until the Civil War trying to persuade you to give slavery up. You said no. It triggered a civil war. We beat you. And from a position of moral, political, and military superiority, terms were dictated to the conservative South.
Why
They didn't get a
the
choice.
South rise up? Why did the South rise up? Was it because we were trying to get rid of slavery as an institution legislatively, and they decided not to play along with that, and so that they rose up?
One of the reasons, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. This plays into my point. We got rid of it legislatively first.
No, we didn't. Actually, the only way we got rid of it legislatively was once they seceded from the Union. Once they seceded from the Union, we passed the 13th Amendment without them. That was part of the reason why they were pissed during potential negotiations of terms, where they wanted to get back into the Union in enough time to block the 13th Amendment. And Lincoln said, no. You don't get a choice. We're not letting you in. You don't get to play anymore. We are dictating terms to you. This idea, this is what I mean. There was enough abolitionist messaging and rhetoric that successfully persuaded like half the country that slavery needed to be abolished. That was mostly in the North. We got basically halfway there. What happened afterwards? Progressives had to take power, or progressives in power had to wield state power against regressive conservatives.
And they did so successfully, and then the conservatives said, we're not playing anymore, we're going to fight you. It was the South that rose up.
No, I'm saying afterwards.
Or do you believe this was a war of northern aggression?
No, it was
the South rose up and violated the terms of the Constitution in order to take arms against the legislatively elected government of the United States of America.
But I understand, but this doesn't play into your message, because by your logic, the North should have let them back in and try to do another vote. Hey guys, listen.
No, once you cross certain lines,
you broke norms.
Burn shit
We don't
down.
get to do that. We don't get to do that. We don't get to break norms. Come back in and we'll vote on it again.
No,
that's not what happened.
Whick just said that when you break certain lines, you burn shit down.
Yes.
And I think what you guys are getting not stuck on. I don't know how interesting this is for you guys. I'm like completely dazed. But I think the point is that Whick is saying is that the lines that you guys are stating that conservatives are continuously breaking are he doesn't see those as
I don't think we should go and have a civil war.
Very quickly, you know what else helped speed up the passing of the Civil Rights Act? The assassination of Kennedy. Just saying.
Well, so Whick, is it your position that pretty much like based off of Pondering's framing that the North provoked the South? Is that like a fair assessment in your mind?
No, I think that the South decided we aren't going to care about democracy in here. We want slavery, and we will enforce our will upon the North, regardless of what they vote for and what they want. And they demonstrated that by rising up, right, and fighting and striking and firing the first shot. In fact, I believe
against Fort Sumter.
Yeah. And so they demonstrated they didn't care about the norms. They didn't care about institutions, and they were willing to use violence, right, to enforce their will, right? And because they were actively shooting and raising military and an army against us, yes, then it's okay to burn shit down. But you know what's not okay to burn shit down? If they don't pass food stamps. You don't go to fucking war over fucking food stamps.
No, nobody's advocating for war. We're just pointing out that.
Then why are you using civil war as an example?
Because we're pointing out that in the end, progressive change that you support had to be executed through force and pressure. Persuasion wasn't enough to win the day. That's the point.
Cruz, let me talk.
Sorry, Katie.
2.0 Ted Cruz, Katie. 2.0.
Yeah.
Call me Miss. So Whick, I think that and like we talked a bit about the fetishization of institutions, and I think that Roe v. Wade and how the courts were stacked in a way that allowed the turning of Roe v. Wade is actually a really good example, because you would be like, well, they did it through the institution. They didn't rise up in violence. They followed the stuff that the institution allowed them to do. So it just happened in the institution. And I think part of that liberal mindset is that you can't engage in like, I see the turning of Roe v. Wade as a type of violence against like women.
No, I understand. I agree with you.
If you agree with me, then you should agree that violence was created through the institution that I would argue you're fetishizing.
But that doesn't
turn Roe v. Wade.
I would disagree on the word violence. I would say harm. Harm has been done to
Why would you disagree on the word violence, Wick?
Because violence
it's a violation of their rights, is it not? It's a violation of their dignity as persons, and so on and so forth.
It can be, but not all violations of a person's dignity is violence.
That's literally what the word means. Why do you think it starts with V-I-O-L?
Violate. Yeah, that's the root of the word, right? I understand.
Yeah.
But it's substantively
that's what violence
different.
means.
Just because they're related doesn't mean
violence
they're the
doesn't
same.
mean
They're
fisticuffs.
separate words for
a
very big reason. I can violate someone by interrupting and talking, but I have not done violence to them, right?
You literally have, though.
Again, when The reason I make this strong distinction, the reason I make this strong distinction is because when I say, hey, this person's doing violence against me, I need to be able to communicate clearly and understand clearly that it's not them interrupting me, that they are physically threatening my well-being, right? In a way that could lead to my harm or death.
Hang on, Katie. Whick, why do you think we have the phrase corporal violence?
Because you need to call everything violence.
Because violence is so general, you actually have to specify it to refer to bodily harm only.
Violence usually results in some sort of violation of the physical, right? It's usually that.
That's the corporal part. That's the body. That's what that means.
Well, I think Katie would make the
corporeal reality, physical reality. It's what
I understand. Again, the reason I don't like conflating violence to everything, though, and why I don't like the academic use of it.
But hang on.
Because when I communicate, I need it to be clear, and I need people to understand when I say something is violent. I need them to understand it in a certain way, and I don't need them to be wondering, "Oh, did they make a mean tweet at me?"
Whick, I understand. I understand what you're saying. So just stop right there. I get it. I hear what you're saying. But you're making an equivocation in the opposite direction. You're saying that something else is equivalent to something that is not violence. It is more benign than violence. It hasn't achieved the level of being violence yet. I'm telling you, absolutely it has. Because the result of that is you downgrade the importance of addressing the thing because this doesn't amount to a fist to the jaw, as if that's the worst thing that can happen to a human being.
Yes, I think that's part of where the liberalism like literally kicks in this instance, Whick, where like if you admit it as violence in that way, what you actually mean is that you're talking about when physical violence happens, that's when you burn the bridge.
Well, let me ask you.
Wait, let me finish.
Okay, then I have a question for you after.
Sure, but every type of violence that isn't physical violence can be tolerated, and that's a problem when you're using powerful institutions that absolutely have the power of violence in their advantage to physically harm individuals. That's the issue.
Can I
now you can
respond?
Ask me.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's go by your framing, right? Because the Supreme Court has done literal violence to you, or to an American woman, let's say, because you're not in America, right? But let's say you did live in America and you were subject to this nation's laws, and so they did literal violence to you. Would it be justified, in your opinion, to go and punch, stab, or kill a Supreme Court justice?
No.
They have done violence to you.
Whick, what are you trying to get at?
What I'm trying to get at is the reason that I don't like calling it violence, because when we call things violence, there is an understanding, a cultural kind of colloquial understanding that if violence is being done to you, you can do violence to the person doing that violence.
People have used the term violence to refer to different types of improper treatment since the 16th century.
Academically,
wait,
yes,
this
but
is
no.
Okay, do you
16th
think gay
century
just
Whick.
means happy?
Who do you think you're talking about when you say academically?
Do you think gay just means happy, or has the word evolved over the years? Right? Do you think gay still only means happy, or do you think it has maybe taken on cultural and colloquial significance that has transcended its initial?
Well, hang on, but now
right?
what's actually
do we think that's
no, but you're leaning on a natural attitude towards the term violence that simply isn't given. People do regard verbal and normative violations as violence, nonetheless. They have for a very, very long time. It is not simply universally the case, not even now, and certainly not until very recently, that it was only considered violence if skin was broken.
I think you're just substantively wrong on this. I think a minority has always viewed, right? I can even see, I'll even grant you that there has been some people who would agree with your stance, but I would say that is the minority and has been a minority for as long as I can remember, right?
Can I ask you something? Because you very often, and I understand because it's an excellent tool to...
Wait, I really want to clarify. Is that okay?
Sure.
Whick, here's the thing. When we're talking about the institution of the Supreme Court and the people who packed the Supreme Court to turn Roe v. Wade, and that has perpetuated violence, if people think that tells them that they can go and murder individuals, that's you again straw manning weird shit.
Why
and
is
that's
it?
fine if
why
you
is
need
it
to...
a straw man? This is something
I'm
that
not
people have
done.
said.
Because you're committing epistemic violence against the concept of violence.
The reason why I brought that up is because we are talking about the way that we want to change and form the institutions to be the proper tools that they're meant to be when people are playing unfairly, people are playing violently inside the system, and you are permitting that because the violence is happening inside the system.
I am not.
So when I'm talking about
this idea of
it being
permission,
violent,
this idea of permission, do you not think I oppose this?
No, you do. But
Yes.
what you were saying
But
earlier
I
was
draw the line at opposing it in certain ways. And one of those ways that I think it would be entirely inappropriate and counterproductive to oppose it is through physical violence.
Sure, but even beyond that, see, that's the thing. It's nobody here on this panel is advocating for violence.
Okay, stop. Because you say that you're not advocating for this, but what you're communicating absolutely does not, does to certain ears, right? We talk about stochastic.
Yes, to
right?
certain ears, Whick.
But this isn't uncommon. This isn't uncommon. Right? You are acting as if what you say has no weight. And people need to understand what you mean. But what you're saying is these people have done violence to me, right?
Like
these people have done violence to me. So what people hear is it's okay to do violence to them.
Here's an alternative. Here's an alternative. Perhaps what we're actually proposing is that since certain institutions have been changed, warped, broken, or corrupted by bad faith, regressively conservative actors, we would like to bend, twist, or shape them back and not necessarily kill anybody. What about that? That's why I support.
You are saying this, right?
Right.
But I think that, again,
I think Corey is too. President
what
Sunday,
is communicated, Katie. What people say, and what is communicated isn't a one-for-one. It's just not.
So you think messaging is important, right, Whick?
Yes.
I think it's really important to curate your message appropriately.
Yes.
I think we're all on the same page there. Then we're trying to maybe point that out
to you. Disagree with what's appropriate.
And I have some hypotheticals I want to ask you.
I think my way is going to lead to better outcomes, and you disagree. And that's fine.
What better? Wait a minute. Okay, actually, can you answer that first?
Yes, I can.
What is the better
I think
outcome?
that if suddenly everyone was Whick and communicated like me, I think for the most part, right, in general, and now I'm not perfect, right?
You can't say everybody. You mean everybody who's not Republican, right? Because if everybody was like you, this would be an issue,
everyone on my
right?
side, if everyone on the left on my side, kind of like things communicated like me, right, presented things like me and talked like me, right? I think absolutely we would not have just 50 seats. We would have 60 to 70 seats. I absolutely think that. I think that the Democrats would win bigger, harder, and better overall. Because I think what turns away a non-insignificant amount of people is this idea, right? That you talk about, like, these people are doing violence to me. It's these little messaging things that all kind of coagulate together. Coagulate's a fun word. But all try to make this amalgamation of the left messages, right? And I think that we, on the left, give them ammo, which we do not need to do. So yes, when I say better outcomes, I think I'm looking legislatively, I'm looking electorally. Yes, absolutely.
I think you are out of your mind, given that the current leader of the Democratic Party is Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., who is tarred and feathered by the right as a socialist communist pedophile.
But you know the reason that
wait a minute, and for all his successes,
what did Biden do to be called a pedophile?
And for all his successes, has been thwarted very often by a consistent Republican opposition that continues to act in bad faith and two moderate Democrats. So I'm kind of at a loss. You're basically listening.
So,
if we just
let me tell you why
if Democratic wait a
minute,
if Democratic leadership was just more moderate in their rhetoric, not Joe Biden rhetoric, like not Joe Biden moderates, like even more moderate apparently, and
Joe Biden
right
is a moderate.
Say what?
Joe Biden is a moderate.
I agree, but apparently not moderate enough, given that he doesn't have.
And moderate and centrist are different. You understand that too, right?
Okay, so do you think he's a centrist?
No,
or no?
But
do you
he
think
is moderate.
Do you think he personally is, or
I can't. I don't know enough about.
I think he personally is, right? But I think his administration has been relatively progressive. Anyway, sidebar. So Joe Biden, who is seen as again a centrist and a moderate by a lot of people, he's a Washington establishment figure for decades, 40 years, and campaigned as a centrist and a moderate. He's being tarred and feathered as a socialist communist and he doesn't enjoy a 60 or 65 seat Senate majority. So to me, what you're saying is he's got to be even more moderate and more centrist in his rhetoric, or the leadership of the Democratic Party.
No, because he's being affected by rhetoric that is not his, and it's through again, we're talking. The question, the hypothetical is if everyone operated like me. If everyone operated with the messaging of Joe Biden, I think it would be better too. But everyone does not, right?
Fair enough. I think you give a disproportionate weight to what you see as the leftist.
I'm just observing what the effect is having, right?
I would love to see the data for it, because what I see. Here's what I see. I see relatively fringe elements of the left who have very little, if any, state power. And they're being weaponized by the right, because the right's really good at weaponizing cherry-picked examples of nobodies with no power and blowing it wildly out of proportion. For example,
and late last year, have centrists get outraged about that.
So, for example, Whick, you want to talk? I remember this is a beautiful example. Aretha Franklin's Natural Woman. This went on Fox News. Nancy Mace, a sitting Republican who's pitched as a moderate. There was headlines all over Fox News and other conservative places. It was on Twitter as well, that Natural Woman was transphobic, according to trans activists. Turns out the account which said it was A, a satirical account, and B, had 2,000 followers. And it got blown up by Ben Shapiro, Fox News, Nancy Mace, and others, because it turns out the right hyper focuses on these niche bullshit issues, which has no relevance to state power, and they're able to campaign off it.
Okay, a couple things. So first of all, $10 from Origin of Language to say, Whick, you're referring to the colloquial understanding of violence, but everyone works with a distinct language game. And when the meaning of words clash, you must strive to reach a common ground.
God, I feel so much more centrist now all of a sudden that Origin's the one who said
that. But I want to address your point here, because I think it plays into my point, right? If we had better message control, they would have a much less ammo, much less of these examples to point out. And I think this does matter. So I hear all the time, right, that the left has no state power and therefore is powerless. I don't think that's true. Well, I agree with you. In America, they have very little legislative power. That's not the only power structure or institution of power that matters, and that drives conversation. I think that the left has a lot of cultural power in America. I think that it has not as much as maybe the right wing would like to pretend it does, but it's not nothing, right? And they control a lot of these levers of power, and that's why canceling works.
Name one.
Hollywood is a good one. I
the
think
left controls Hollywood. What are you talking about?
What do you mean control? You do not think that the left
levers of power
has
very
institutional
Hang
power?
on, you're gonna be this pedantic about.
Sunday, there was a black mermaid recently.
Wait, are you saying that the left has no cultural power or relevance in America?
I'm saying
Whick,
that
hang on, Ted. Wait. I want to respond to this. Whick,
do they not have cultural?
No, wait. Jesus Christ, let me talk for 5 goddamn seconds. Whick, do you not think, in light of what Ted was just saying about the right hyperfixating on non-issue bugbears that are alarming to like a general reactionary population, do you not think that maybe the corporations that are making these movies aren't also doing so to capitalize on that?
It's a feedback loop.
Whick, Disney censors out their gay scenes for a Chinese audience. They are not leftists. They don't give a shit. They're doing this because the discourse around it makes them money.
Yes, I agree with that. But
so the left doesn't hold those levers of power.
Wait, do you think leftists don't? Okay.
What are you referring to?
Do you moderate your message differently, right, to different audiences?
No.
No?
I only have one audience.
Okay. If you are not doing that, if you are not moderating your message to different audiences, then you're making a mistake.
Wait. Hang on. Sorry. Just so I understand you correctly. So you think Disney is moderating out gay people from their movies to a Chinese audience because they're playing the long game?
No. I think that they're capitalists too. But again, you're picking one aspect of these things. But again, I want to ask you. I want to be very clear.
What remains?
Do you think? And it's a very, very simple question, right? Do
No,
you think that the left has
please.
no institutional cultural power within Hollywood? Yes or no?
I have no idea. I'm just curious
Okay.
if you can point to one that's real. One Whick. Find me one.
Was Hollywood? I'm standing
agnostic.
by Hollywood. I'm
but
doubling
what-
down
for
on this.
academia.
You mentioned
Go for
one
academia.
company, Disney, that in a different non-American thing, right? Non-American
but Whick,
theater
if they're values
Ms.
mixed,
Whick,
audience
hang on,
Ms.
hang on.
Sunday,
that they
you didn't
change
know
it
that
for
there's
that?
a leftist orthodoxy on college campuses? I can't see his face, but he probably just tipped over in his chair.
I'm physically dying.
What, do you not think the left has academic
actually.
institutional power?
They don't, Whick.
They don't?
More left-wingers are
this
kicked out
is
of
just-
universities than right-wingers.
Do
And when
you
the
know what
right-wingers...
institutional?
Hang on, wait. And when right-wingers even just claim, without any evidence, that they've in some sense been dealt an unfair hand by not being taken as the gospel truth, they get to do a multi-million-dollar media tour afterwards. That doesn't happen with leftists. They just go away
The right
because
has
some donor didn't like them
institutional
advocating against
power as
oil or
well.
something.
They are not powerless, right? They do
They
have
have
in some media sectors.
No, but you're
are
talking about
absolutely
levers.
right
Whick,
controlled.
Whick,
But
you
to
said they have
act as if
levers
there
of
are
power
no
in Hollywood.
leftist cultural centers of power is
Whick,
mind-blowingly
hang on.
dumb.
Wait. Whick. You said they have levers of power in Hollywood. I want you to point to one that isn't simply a company generating controversy because that sells for the same reason that the right is successful doing.
But this is this kind of thing you're going to retreat to back.
But I'm
every
not retreating.
single
I'm asking you
example
for
I
one
give you-
example of
Stop.
what you're claiming.
Every single example I give you, you're going to retreat back to
haven't
this,
given me
right?
one.
That, oh, it's just capitalism.
But
that's
you
doing
haven't
this.
given
Oh,
me
they're
one.
just
You
changing it
claimed
for
that
capitalism.
When you
No,
use
but
the word power, power means at least so you might want to like distinguish between by power because I think
Yeah.
President Sunday is referring to like as you said
Well,
the
I'm
levers
just
of power.
very perplexed. I'm just very
Maybe you
perplexed
mean
given how
influence.
Katie, please. I'm just very perplexed given how like pedantic
President
we're being
Sunday,
about the
if you
definition
keep
of violence.
shushing me,
I don't
I'll
care.
get pissy. I swear to God.
You haven't. She's not
me,
been
do it.
pissy yet, folks.
Do
This
it.
is
I
a
have
I'm
not
not
been
pissy.
pissy
absence
yet,
of
okay?
piss.
Okay,
I've not
Whick,
been pissy yet.
Whick, I don't understand how it can be so pedantic about the definition of violence, but you're perfectly willing to say they have levers of power in Hollywood without being able to produce a single concrete example.
What do you mean? Again, okay, so
That's what
a
I'm asking.
single
What do you mean?
concrete example of what I mean
Yes.
about Hollywood having levers of power. Okay, so for example, right in America, I don't care about Hollywood in China or Hollywood in other countries. We're
Okay, but
talking
you should
American
because the reason.
political
Do you know
power
why?
and
Do you know why I
American
specify
cultural
what they do in China?
Right.
Do you know why I specify that?
because it supports your position.
No. I'm specifying China because it suggests that because they're willing to compromise on basically every single leftist issue, that's not the motivating factor.
Let me give you this isn't Hollywood, but let's do the news media. Let's do CNN, right? Do you think that the CNN, right, isn't or at least maybe not recently, right, but at least before during the Trump years, right? During the Trump years, you don't think that they exercised some of their framing ability to paint Trump in a bad light?
The definition of leftism is not being anti-Trump. Richard Spencer is anti-Trump.
So I'll throw him a bone here. So
Oh.
again, for all intents and purposes, and this is where the split's going to be, he's going to say that some of these capitalist enterprises, either for sincere ideological reasons or for capitalistic profit motivation, will do things that at least conversationally, situationally benefit or are more proximate to the left. Be it
Yes,
leftist
he's
culture
falling
war.
into the culture war
Right.
propaganda.
This is where I throw him a bone because I think even with the bone being thrown, he still loses.
Do you not think that there is a cultural struggle in America right now?
So
Do you think that everyone that the culture in America is
that's not what I
strictly
said.
right
Wait,
or strictly
that's not
left?
what I said. Wait,
Wick.
that's not what I said.
Yeah, it's not what she said.
Yeah,
but
you're
here's the
laughing
other
at this
thing.
idea that I'm buying into the cultural war rhetoric. I'm
No, no,
asking
no.
you,
No,
do
no,
you
no,
not
no.
think
Wick.
that there is a war going on
Wick, she
about
thinks that-
American culture?
She
No,
thinks, or at
that's
least
not what
I
I'm saying.
think, that you are overemphasizing the importance, thus creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, which, by the way, helps out right-wingers. They can't compete on matters of substantive policy because their record sucks, so they play niche culture war issues.
I think
CNN's, we'll
culture
use CNN as an
absolutely
example.
matters. Yes, I
It
think
matters
you're
considerably.
downplaying it.
You are downplaying it.
No, I think you're downplaying it. I think you're downplaying the effect that these cultural issues have on legislation, on how people vote, on
Wick,
how
can I
people
ask you something?
where
I
people
agree
put
with
their
you.
money.
Wick,
right?
can I ask
Wondering,
you
you mind
something?
if I engage with this a bit?
Sure.
Sorry,
Ted, by the way, I don't
Ted.
answer to pondering anymore. I'm Ed.
So
I
I
have had the name
apologize,
changed.
Ted.
How about Teddy?
I
Senator.
Okay, Wick, I think it was really interesting. I actually agree with you that there's significant to the cultural like divide that is happening. I do agree with you on that. That's not what I meant when I said that you're falling into the culture war propaganda stuff. Listen, you said specifically, you've said it multiple times, that there's like leverages of power, and you say institutional power. Okay. Institutional power and leverages of power is not the same as sometimes stuff happen that looks progressive or woke, and also some people who are leftist or woke work at a corporation, so they might affect the corporation. That's not what institutional means. Not exclusively.
Do you not think the media is an institution?
If you want to say
America?
there's influence, if you want to say there's influence, that's fine. But if you're going to talk about institutional power of the left, I think President Sunday was correct in like pinning you down on that.
Okay.
Not in a homoerotic way.
Well,
Actually,
not,
yes.
Right? But I just fundamental. I think that media, right? Both news media as well as entertainment media. I think it is an institution in America.
I agree. Which one do you think has the advantage? No, I agree. I'll own it. Because we'll fight on this and I'll win.
Power, I think, is the question.
It's an institution,
and there are levers of power within that institution, right? That individuals within that institution, also groups, in that institution, can lean on to make changes. Yes or no?
Wick,
do you agree with me or disagree with?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that the media. I think that the media is an institution, and I think that it does exercise influence to one degree over another, or another over legislation. I agree. Now, my question to you is, who do you think holds the power in media?
In most media, right? In most media, I think the left holds the power. Not
when
all
you say
media.
Most media, please clarify. I'm just curious.
Hollywood.
I'm sorry. I should clarify. I apologize. Actually, wait a minute.
And thank you for the great ice beans. 4 people. Excellent. Thank you.
But I'm sorry. When you say media, you were mentioning CNN earlier. So do you distinguish? I assume news media from?
Yes, there are different types of media.
Okay.
Right. Hollywood is one type of media, right? I would tell Hollywood. I use that as a shorthand for.
I do still want clarification on why he thinks Hollywood is controlled by the left in any respect.
Because occasionally they do things that gesture towards a more progressive.
But
is
that like? Are we saying that the mere presence of a black Little Mermaid is evidence of?
There's also sneakers on a green
thank
M&M.
you for the great Sonsol. Sonsol, welcome. Oh, Sonsol. Also, Katie Sonsol is begging to get on. So
there's also
but Sonsol doesn't
green,
treat me like a human being, so no.
They're also.
But I don't treat Sonsol like a human being, so it kind of balances out, Katie.
There are also sneakers on green M&Ms, Mr. President. It's not just a black mermaid. There was also a black elf in the Lord of the Rings TV show. Do you not
think that in general, over the last 30 years, the general entertainment industry in Hollywood has put out more progressive messages than they have before?
I think it's a little bit. Hang on. I think it's a little bit telling, Wick, if you're going to claim that the left has some control over Hollywood, if the evidence of it is simply that we've managed to catch up to like the 70s in terms of representation.
It's not I'm not talking about representation here. I don't care about the black Aragorn or the black elf. I don't care about that shit. I'm talking about the messaging. Right, that is put.
But the messaging is literally just the presence of black people in these movies. There are no leftist.
Okay, no step on steak for $10 says, honest question for these guys. What are you
referring to?
Do they think that conservatives feel as if they are culturally under attack only because they are told to do so by talking heads, or do they honestly feel this way? And that's a good question.
I can think of one vaguely left-wing show that had like a fairly mainstream audience in the last 5 years.
The Wire.
And
that's off the top of my head. The Wire is pretty progressive.
Great show, one of the greatest shows of all time. The Expanse.
Yeah, I'll give you that one. That's
the Expanse is another one.
But the news media.
Without even thinking about it, I gave you 2.
Well, I think what President Sunday's point is, media used to be incredibly conservative. Now it's less so. Ergo, you conclude it's progressive. What if it's just less
more
conservative?
It is
more progressive than it is.
What if it's not even less conservative? What if it's just less racist? Like, what if the politics are identical?
And
the only thing that's changed is that there are black people
of being more progressive.
Like, do you watch Carnival Row? Do you watch Carnival Row?
I've seen Carnival Row. It's a great show.
Yeah. Season two kind of sucks though, because the whole thing devolves into a complex, nuanced narrative of how communism bad.
Communism is bad. I don't think that's a progressive. I think it is.
But it does so. It does so by portraying it as strictly speaking a Leninist slave labor colony that's imperializing the place from the first movie. And the positive endpoint is that everything returns to exactly where it was at the beginning of the show. There's not a leftist message in here.
So it's been a minute since I finished Carnival Row.
That's literally what happens.
Right? But yes, they do. The communists are some of the bad guys, right, in that show.
But they're only the bad guys because they make them into irrational, frothing at the mouth serial killers and mass murderers, because that's what happened in the Soviet Union
that
and
is
the popular
communism,
imagination.
to be clear, right?
That's
President,
not,
check the chat, please.
So as far while he's doing that, as far as the media thing goes, because you mentioned CNN earlier, and I guess I was focusing more on the news media, or political media outside of like the entertainment industry. Do you think that the news media is like in the political commentary media? You think that is more in the hands of the left than the right?
It depends. This one is a struggle. This is where the war is coming in, because there's a struggle between two entities, right? The left and the progressives, the extreme left and progressives are fighting against the extreme right in this. And I think this bears out in the more extreme, like you see Fox News getting more extreme, but you also see a lot of the more left-leaning organizations also get more extreme, right? And I think there's a reciprocal radicalization going on. Right?
I fundamentally disagree. This is, and it was good. I'm glad you said that, because it helps me conceptualize on how we look at things differently. You and I have a fundamentally wildly different interpretation of the media. So Fox News is by far, in terms of the mainstream media, by far the overperformer. It is the king, the titan. It is ideologically right-leaning in a way that CNN, the New York Times, MSNBC are not ideologically left-leaning. Jon Stewart said this famously 10 years ago to Chris Wallace's face, and he brought the receipts. The New York Times, CNN, AP, Reuters, all of them, with the possible exception of MSNBC, they're lazy and sensationalist. You can look on CNN, you can look at the New York Times. There's a reason that the New York Times pitch bot, which makes fun of the New York Times propensity to both sides an issue, is so popular, because they'll throw Biden under the bus and Democrats under the bus far more likely than Fox News will throw Republicans under the bus. So not only is Fox News bigger and more successful, it's much more ideologically bent and driven. CNN, not the case. They just did.
Well, I think that's indicative. So I think you're right. First of all, $4 from Trib to say Hollywood is left-leaning, more so liberal. So for president, not left, but for most, yes, left. Okay.
Bless you for bringing up a single example.
Okay, but right with like again, the reason
you guys can tell Sansol I sent him a link.
Okay, Sansol, you got a link, buddy. Come on in. Okay. You know, moderation rising, because I'm not a centrist, but I will say this: I am a moderate. I do fight against extremism. I am a moderate. I think these are something like you guys are mistaking centrism for moderate.
Can you go back to the news thing example, because you were on the verge of something?
Exactly. Yeah. So I think you're right in that the Fox News specifically has a very clear ideological bent, right? Whereas CNN and these other news sites do not have that same clear ideological bent. But I think that is a artifact of leftism, not, as President Sunday said, not being a coherent thing, whereas the conservative right absolutely is.
Wait, so now it's not a coherent thing that has the levers of power that we can't identify a single instance of.
So don't you think that that's a meaningful distinction when you talk about these things? This is what I mean. Like, when we talk about institutions and whether or not the left has institutional power, I want to be very clear about this. My position is not that the left doesn't have any institutional power, but just that its fringe or cringe elements are underrepresented in terms of the levers of power compared to the right's cringe and fringe. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a sitting member of Congress. There is not a single fucking analog to her in the Democratic Party. That is a vast, meaningful, highly important substantive difference that needs to exude from your pores every time you talk politics. every time.
There are a few of them in the Republican
Yes,
Party.
exactly.
Oh
There's not just a will of both sides. No, it's wildly asymmetrical. Wildly.
Do you not think? Okay, so while
wait a
Marjorie
minute. Hey,
Taylor
I'm sorry.
Greene is,
I
no,
just
stop. Marjorie Taylor Greene is absolutely in a league of her own. Let's be clear.
Well, no, she's
right?
not. Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, that was Katie's
But
point.
do
Actually,
you not
no.
think?
She's typical. She's just atypically embarrassing for them. That's
when you have, right, there are, and again, like, I'm not the person to ask for this because I think that most of the people in the Democratic Party are pretty reasonable. But if you asked a Republican, right, or a conservative-leaning person who are the left's crazies, they would give you names. They would have
but they would also call people on the left. They would also call those people on the left liberals because they have no organ for distinguishing any of these categories.
And also they wouldn't. And by the way, we don't even have to talk about the crazies on the right. We can talk about the so-called moderates. Nancy Mace is a great example. She's just my go-to example because she's seen as the moderate it girl of the Republican Party. Votes in line with her party the vast majority of the time, even when she calls them out, even when she says, hey, supporting restrictive abortion laws in South Carolina, it's ridiculous. Republicans are being far too regressive when it comes to the Republican Party, but she will vote in line with them. She just said today that Joe Biden, who is a president who can't find his own pants, outsmarted the Republican Party in the debt ceiling negotiations, which means she says she will not vote for the deal cut by McCarthy and Biden. Even their moderates are nuts to one extent or another.
What? So, why? Okay. So again, if your definition of nuts is sometimes, right, I disagree with the Democrats and I don't like the legislation that they put forward.
Okay, but no. The definition of nuts is that this is oriented around wanting to disappear entire categories of people.
Does Nancy Mace? I confess, I'm not familiar enough with Nancy Mace to say whether or not she supports anti-trans legislation. Does she support anti-trans legislation?
Rhetorically, no. Rhetorically, she opposes it. Where she votes, that remains to be seen because she votes in line with
she has not yet made her stance clear. Rhetorically, however,
who's the non-transphobic Republican candidate?
So again, right? I think putting Nancy Mace,
I almost tried to answer that in good faith.
This is a fun trick that happens, right? So you point out Marjorie Taylor Greene. Crazy, right? We all agree she's crazy. But that's not the only crazy they have. They have Nancy Mace. And to equate these two things...
Wait a minute.
When we talk about... When I say, hey, right, I don't think we should dehumanize the right, right? And then you say, well, we don't dehumanize the right. Okay. But then you do shit like this.
I didn't equate them. To clarify.
This feels like you're equating them. You may not have intended to do, but you are absolutely equating these two people.
I just don't think she's as nuts. I think there are degrees of nuts. You can have 5 nuts. You can have 4 nuts. There's degrees of separation. I don't think Nancy Mace is as crazy as Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert, Paul Gosar, Matt Gaetz, et cetera, and so forth. But yeah, in terms of how she votes, yeah. In terms of what she says when it's convenient, she's also the one who thinks
not voting for the debt ceiling doesn't make her nuts.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, well, see, then we have a fundamentally disagreement. I don't think an argument about the debt ceiling makes you fundamentally good, righteous, or bad and evil. I don't think these are. It's a policy thing. It's a pragmatic.
I just said she's not moderate. She's not moderate for not voting for a McCarthy and Biden debt ceiling negotiation. Which, if we don't raise the debt ceiling, or if Biden doesn't invoke the 14th Amendment or whatever by the X date, the United States might default. 8 million people may lose their jobs. It could crater 401ks and savings account, cripple the global economy. Yeah, it's nuts, Whick. It's nuts. Hey, what's up, Sans?
Okay, how's it going? Okay, I only have 15 minutes extra to talk to you guys, so just letting you guys know that up front. So, okay, I want to ask just like a couple of questions because
14 minutes left.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so what is your definition of institution? Do you guys mean by institution only governmental like bodies, or do you mean like, an institution such as the media could be an institution? I know that fuck, I don't know. I remember your old
the distinction will be between formal and informal institutions.
Sure, but like when we're talking about like the levers of power in a country, I would assume that we would also imagine that cultural power fits into that somehow, right?
Yeah, of course it does.
Okay, so why did everyone act incredulous when
because he wasn't providing an example?
Well, he said Hollywood. He said the media.
Yeah, but he didn't justify that. So it's not enough to just say, well, they have levers in Hollywood. You have to show where and how, right? And he couldn't do it.
But do you disagree with it?
Yes.
Okay, so why would you disagree with it? Do you think that
I
the left has...
I don't have to justify a negative statement to his unfounded postulation that the left has levers of power in Hollywood.
I'll tell you what, I'll find some more specific examples.
He hasn't provided an argument
for
me to refute.
And we can do specific.
Okay, so the
examples.
argument is
I'm making
that
a prediction. I'm making a prophecy that every one of these examples will be not enough because you'll find some weird reason why it's not enough.
Well, I mean, you've given yourself an excellent cope for when you're arguing.
That is a counter argument. That's the whole point of a counter argument.
Is it though? Right? Like it will. Okay, I'll be more specific in my
Sansal's still
prophecy.
only got 15
it will
minutes.
all involve capitalism.
Go ahead, Sansel. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah. So I guess like when you're asking for a specific example, you're asking for an example of like a specific media company.
I want you to show. Here's what I want you to show me. Okay, I want you to show me a leftist motivated agent that is able to push a button that says yes or no on something. Demonstrate it. If you can't, then the statement that the left has levers of power in Hollywood is literally untrue.
I don't think that we disagree on what it means to have like institutional power in that case. Then I think that like when we're talking about cultural power, we're not going to be talking about like, and also number one, is this entire thing trying to convert Whick to socialism?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Socialist.
Stalinism in particular.
I need to be like,
welcome, centrist brother. Not a socialist. It must mean you're a centrist.
I'm Ted Cruz. What are you talking about?
That's kind of what I'm getting out of this, but I just want to make sure so that I know what like the correct response is here. Are we talking specifically? We're trying to make Whick into a socialist, or
into a communist?
Into a communist. Okay. Well, number one, I don't think that's going to happen. Number two, I think that your bar for saying that there is institutional power in something is so high that there can never be anything that would satisfy the requirement.
They said lever of power, I think specifically.
Well, no. I'm curious. Who can push a button on the right media wing that would say yay or nay to a thing? Who can push a button?
Yeah, give me an example of that, so that I know what I can give as an example on the left. What is like a lever of power culturally that the right has?
The Koch brothers versus George Soros. What are we doing here?
Wait, I'm sorry. What was Katie saying? I didn't understand her.
I was saying Murdoch. Murdoch?
Rupert Murdoch.
Wait, that's a person. That's not an action.
Well, no, I thought you asked for like a person on the right who could push a button.
No,
within an
like
institution.
some like example of like what button they're pressing that would give them power that you would say is institutional power. What is this thing?
I would say if I was going to help Katie out with the Murdoch example would be like Fox News's coverage during the 2020 election cycle about like election insecurities and whatnot. That came from like a top-down executive influence where they wanted to put their hands on the scale for the Republicans and President Trump so as to avoid losing their audience. And so they push from the top down their talent and their producers and their writers to lean into election denialism.
And we can't say that the left was also from the top down saying like we're going to push back against these things, like at
Can you give a specific example? I mean, that's what part of this Sunday is like. Can you give an example analogous to that then?
Sure, I would. I don't know who the CEO or MSNBC's like CEO is, but we're talking about like them pushing back against this idea for.
Well, look,
I would assume.
So the example that Ted Cruz gave is like, so we have now leaked text messages of like, pretty much, I think, drawing a much more direct link of how like they're pushing the button and influencing. Let's say,
but you don't think MSNBC has similar things? Like,
I'm kind of blown away. Hang on, with respect, Sansel, I think you should come up with a different example, because to me, if your idea of the left exercising influence of power is them not allowing their talent to deny baseless election denialism,
we're talking about cultural power and narratives right now. If you want to all of a sudden say like, oh, well, they're just like pushing for the right thing, so it doesn't actually count as, using institutional power. Well, then we can do that. And you guys just like auto win the debate.
I don't think that's an inherently leftist, with respect, I don't think that that's an inherently leftist position that Donald Trump lost the election fair and square. I just think that's a recitation of fact.
Oh,
there are people on there are people on the right who have that exact same stance.
Exact stance of which one?
There are people on the right who acknowledge that Donald Trump lost the election.
Most people on the right, I would say. I don't know for sure though.
Amen.
I don't know about most people.
That's what I mean. I think
polls have changed.
I don't know if
I could be wrong on that. Yeah.
I just don't think it's an inherently leftist position. It's almost like saying a right earther pushing, again, a flat earth, or a right winger pushing a flat earth conspiracy theory, and somebody else saying no, the Earth is round. Ha ha, leftist. No, I don't. I just don't think that's how it works.
Okay, Spicy Cannon Vodder for 1,000 bits says Whick and Sonsol versus two of the other for a 2-on-2 debate sometime. We can set that up.
Yeah, that would probably be better if we want to actually.
The man wants to die. I'm down. 2 weeks is my normal.
Okay, so 2 weeks from now we'll have Sunday, and you can choose your ally and me and Sonsol. We'll have to think of a topic, but we can get it.
I'm sorry. So go ahead, Sonsol.
So again, like we're saying, like, okay, so you guys' bar for saying that there's like institutional power for these for like media is like solely in the hands of the right for some reason. Is because
not solely in the hands of the right.
Okay.
Nobody's saying that.
Okay, so we're saying that the left does.
Yeah. So you're like 2 hours late to the conversation. So
that's why I'm like trying to like clarify everything. I'm not trying to strawman you guys.
Yes. Yeah. So one of the positions that everybody, I think everybody actually, including Whick on the panel, is going to agree with, is that it's not simply the case that the world is divided between right and left. The right is very particular. The left is basically only defined by its opposition to the right, and otherwise is a vast constellation of different and often opposing positions. So it's not simply the case that if the media is not controlled by the left, therefore it's controlled by the right. It may be controlled to the advantage of the right. I think there's an argument for that.
Well, by that definition, I'm opposed to the right. So I'm a leftist by that definition.
I mean, you think you are. That's
well, no,
but what you're missing here. Well, this is the thing, because the argument was not whether or not Whick was nominally opposed to the right. The question was whether he was in fact opposed to the right, whether what he was doing actually opposed the right, or whether it abetted them in some way. They argue it abets them. I think it's basically neutral. But I don't think he opposes the right in a serious way. I think he opposes certain elements of the right, certainly some of the worst ones. Credit to him for that.
Okay, so I guess like the like big question for me is like, if we're going to say that the left has like no institutional power, like I feel like if we were to look at basically any popular any popular media right now, if we were to look at any like popular narrative that takes off, we're going to be looking at
Black
things that are popular.
There'll be gay people in it. Is that where you're going with this? That's what you got?
Well, I think that like broadly progressive messages are broadly being pushed in a lot of media. You think the
progressive message is having black people in a movie?
Not having black people in a movie. I didn't say
I gave
that
you
whatsoever.
The Wire. Do we not think The Wire?
Let Sonsol give an example. Hang on, he might have been teeing up an example right there. Go ahead, Sonsol.
Okay, so like we can look at like most TV shows, like for example, like my girlfriend made me watch Grey's Anatomy. If you watch Grey's Anatomy, there's a marked shift right before COVID hit, where there's a lot of like social justice warrior like messages in there about like yay women, yay black people. Like they're pushing a lot of like the like broad progressive messages, right?
Yay black.
Yeah, I mean, like it's like. Listen, these are liberals, okay? They're going to be like, they're doing what?
Look at me, Sonsol. Never change.
I can't look at you.
Never change.
I'm not saying that that's the way that I would do things, but that's the way that like fucking like fringe libs do.
Now being yay
so you would agree that on the right, it's
I'm sorry, you guys are acting
I'm
sorry, you guys are acting incredulous, right? But you guys would say that like the liberal way of engaging with like social justice would be like the most cringy, like just like, oh yeah, we love black people type shit, right? You're not going to
talking about we love black people. We're talking about the existence of them there, or being like, what are you referring to, Sonsol?
I'm talking about these exact messages that they are pushing. They are pushing like pro-feminist
We'll demonstrate. Show me. What comes to mind?
Do I have to give you the fucking episode?
Okay, let me give you a gaming example.
This is Sonsol wants to watch Grey's Anatomy.
I'll give you an example. Disco.
I mean,
like, here's another
I could
example.
Point to one.
Again, I'm not googling this and shit. This is off the top of my head. If you want a media that pushed a very left-wing message, Disco Elysium.
At this point, I'm trying to point out.
Disco Elysium's an indie video game, Whick.
It's a huge cultural impact, though.
Oh my god!
Wait! This is mind-blowing to me. Do you not think Disco Elysium had a huge influence on
everyone here is with Disco Elysium, but Whick.
I'm talking about most people.
But having like control of the levers of power doesn't mean you've published media that gets.
That is one of the ways you exercise that control. Yes,
but that's not exercise of control.
Yes, it is.
publishing.
Yes, it is.
Capitalism, right?
Publishing
So-
Control
pieces
of
of
what,
media
Whick?
that promote
okay,
a
so
message
publishing-
is
wait, hold on, wait. So
absolutely a
publishing
way
media
to
that was
promote
pushing for
and
Donald Trump
enforce.
to overturn the 2020 election. They were just
Enforce
publishing
what?
media
What
out
does
there.
Disco Elysium enforce?
They were just
Again.
listen. All they were doing was publishing information that Donald Trump won the election in 2020. So, like, simply publishing media can never be part of control. So your previous argument doesn't stand at all.
The power and control is the fact that money was inserted into it to bias what they were publishing. That is the power that is being used.
Oh, holy
in
shit!
that
You finally
interaction.
like
Oh,
said
actually-
something that like
actually-
changes the entire argument that you made
actually,
earlier. We
I'm
can
pretty
address
sure-
that as well.
Hang on,
So we
hang
can
on.
say like look at
Okay,
like
Sansa,
George
just-
Soros,
just-
like
just shut up for a second, you're
unironically,
useless.
who pushes
So
for like
here's-
plenty. Hold
here,
on, I don't have
Katie,
that much
can you
time.
mute him
I
for a
just want to like put out a couple of
Sorry,
points.
sorry.
All right, I only have like
Well, I know, but this is
4 more
actually
minutes.
really important to
The
the
new
last point.
episode of Grey's Anatomy is coming
Hey,
on. Sansa
wait,
will
hang
get
on.
to it.
Hang on, wait. Just so you know, Wick, Disco Elysium IP was actually bought out from the developers. It is now being turned into a series. They don't actually control Jack. Just so you know.
okay. So
Sansa, what's up, buddy?
okay, so like if we're going to talk about like people like influencing media and culture through money, then we can look at people who are like George Soros, who like I don't know if you guys I don't know if Wick saw my DM earlier when you guys were talking about, oh well, if someone like were to speak out against oil companies, then that would be like a really bad thing for that person because the levers of power might like unperson them or whatever the fuck example you wanted to give, right? Like George Soros funds like tons of left-wing organizations every single year, every single time there's a major thing. And I don't think this is a bad thing. I'm not saying this is a conspiracy. He like literally does this because he sees it as a philanthropic
Yeah,
thing that
we
he can
want
do. We can
institutional
look at
power, and we
basically
want to exercise it. That's good.
we can
Okay,
look
so-
at
so-
any fucking billionaire or like
right.
millionaire in fucking Hollywood.
So-
Oh no, we're talking about
okay,
Hollywood
okay.
again.
Okay,
that
so
donates to
left control over the levers of power in the media is when Black Mermaid.
No.
Yeah, I don't think that you're like engaging in good faith like whatsoever. If that's
Okay.
what you took out of what I just said, like there's almost no point in fucking.
wasn't
I
even
want to.
listening
I want to
to
have this. Okay, now this
Yeah,
is.
well,
How
why the
about this?
fuck
How about this?
even
I want this to be
respond?
an official debate between me and Sansol on Sunday and a person of your choosing. You have to pick your warrior,
Ted,
right? I
Ted,
want to
we're
talk about
nominating Ted.
institutional powers. Okay.
It's
Yeah, I'm
Ted.
saying I'm also agreeing with the TED nomination.
Okay.
and I'm not
Then
taking
in,
no part
in
there.
2
Who's
weeks,
Ted?
you want 2 weeks from now. So 2 weeks from today,
The lesser TED.
the lesser Ted. Okay.
2.0.
2 weeks from
2.0.
today,
Me and
Wow.
Sansol
I think we'd all agree that I am the greater
we'll
Ted here.
have specific examples for you and a specific argument for you, and you can have a specific
God.
argument. And to be clear, I want to make crystal clear my position here is that the left has significant, not entire, not total, not even dominant in all spaces, but significant cultural institutional power in America.
Where?
We can litigate that. I'm going to think
We'll
on my
talk
position
about it
with
during
respect to that as
the-
well. All I'm
Yeah,
saying,
we'll close after this. Yeah.
So-
I'm gonna have to jet here, but
before
Wait,
you go,
Ted wanted
tell
to
us,
talk.
are you going to watch Grey's Anatomy right now?
no, I haven't watched Grey's Anatomy.
Would you tell me?
Good night,
Huh?
everybody. Cheerio.
Yes, I
Tell
would.
me.
I'm not
Thank you,
like
Katie.
embarrassed
Wick.
about it. Who
Thank
fucking
you, Ted.
cares?
I'm just
Just
messing
to
with you, buddy.
point
It's-
out,
Yeah,
Grey's
okay.
Anatomy
Okay.
actually has very anti-feminist arcs because the way that Meredith
Back in
engages
fucking
with her husband-
2008.
it is. I argue that it's more anti-feminist than feminist. I also don't necessarily.
That's your
agree
third
with it.
panel, Wick.
I don't.
That's
I
your
don't.
3
I'm
weeks
not
from
going
today.
to. I refuse
hold on, I'm
to
so-
watch
I'm
Grey's
super-
Anatomy at
hold
all.
on,
I
I'm just
refuse.
super
There,
curious.
look,
Wait,
I'm not
Katie,
going to
what was
say
the
it because it'd be
anti-feminist
toss,
part?
but
What
there are
about her
things I'd
husband?
rather
I-
do
to
than
be
watch
fair,
Grey's
I
She was sleeping
Anatomy.
with her husband.
I did watch until like
$5
season
from
12.
Origin of Language to
So,
say, Wick, I'd
I
like
don't
to
know
talk
how
to
many
you this about what
seasons
is
I'm
liberal
behind.
versus leftist before this debate. Sure, buddy, DM me. Okay, I know we need to close out.
Oh
I know
my
we need to
God.
go. I need to go. But
okay, I just-
Katie, you wanna?
Can I? Because I need to
Console,
leave
go
first.
ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So like I don't know like in what world you guys think that like it sounds like you guys think that the left is like a completely underdog thing still that has like no power culturally, institutionally, like whatsoever. I mean like half of our conversations are predicated upon like leftist activism that
I know
got-
it's sort of like how once upon a time, like other groups with very little power would be the center of conspiratorial talking points, right?
Yeah, I
We,
don't.
we were
I'm talking
talking about
about-
Hollywood extensively. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop the entire conversation. No offense, Wick.
I know. I was waiting. For
We
it
only
to, I
got
was
like
is Whick
Yeah, I don't
academia.
think- I don't
we can
think the
absolutely
fact
talk
that-
about academia. There's a
just,
lot
like,
of
no reason.
Don't do it,
like-
Wick. Just leave this one. Just trust me, okay?
There's just like
Don't
no
even joke.
reason
Just leave it.
to talk about like anything. Like I thought that it would be like
Sansel.
fun to talk to Sunday about this because I think that he's smart, but like he
Sansel.
actually has like no like care in the
I'd
world
like
to
to-
actually engage
I'd
with
like
it.
to engage in some good faith with what you said, if you don't mind.
Okay, it has to be like super quick. Okay.
Yeah. So a big thing that we were talking about is how we're arguing that like activism and people on Twitter and like finding TikToks and shit does not equate institutional power. That's a much higher degree. So like, again, when you guys do this debate, I'll be really interested, but it's just like, it's not proportional the way that institutional power is on the right compared to what's on the left in terms of actual power.
No.
I think that if you're,
Institutional
talking about like socialists, then yeah, like socialists have no institutional power because socialists will never work together in an effective enough way for them to gain electoral power.
Can I
Like-
ask one question before I go? I have to go now, but can I ask one question to Wick?
Yeah, I'll leave right after you.
Who has more institutional power in Hollywood, Wick? Leftists or the Jews?
The Jews don't have institutional power.
I
in
mean,
Hollywood.
she's running the whole stream. Their tentacles are everywhere.
They don't. Again, right? I understand
night,
that
everybody.
some
Take
people
care.
use the left as a dog
I'm
whistle,
outta here.
right, for JQing, but that is absolutely not what I was doing and not what I am doing. I will say to you, Katie, to your point,
It's
I think
just
that
as
they are
weird to say that
asymmetrical.
leftists have institutional power of Hollywood as it is to say that they have institutional power, like Jewish people have institutional power.
I will demonstrate otherwise. on
I
my
would love
debate
to
with
see
Sunday.
that.
Can
But
we do closing
I just want to
statements
correct
before we
a
go?
misconception
we
I think
will.
that you're seeing. I corrected them. Like, just because they are not the same doesn't, like, just because they are asymmetrical doesn't mean they are not proportional. Like, you act as if these TikToks and these little itty bitty kind of grassroots kinds of interactions are not an indicator of institution, and also a driver of institutions to some extent. These absolutely have influence, and that is a form of power. Yes.
Sure. That's not what institutional power means.
I
Let's
disagree.
do closing statements.
Okay.
Can
Ted,
Whick
you
go
go
last
first,
be-
just so. Oh, you want to go last?
Yeah, can Whick go last because he's the outside, like he's
Yeah,
outnumbered
sure.
here. Okay.
Yeah. So Ted, you go first.
Okay, well, listen, Wick, I feel the conversion coming on right now. I feel that the intervention has been wildly successful. I feel the left exuding from it. Your chair has actually shifted leftward during the course of this conversation. It feels right, doesn't it, buddy? You're left-handed now. You're left-hand dominant. I can feel it, man. Anyway, oh, there we go. There we go. So I'll say this in summation. Wick, I do like you a lot, and I do respect you too. That has not changed. I do think, again, that you give a completely undeserved benefit of the doubt and charity to the Republican Party and right-wingers. I think you need to be very careful about that, because I agree with you. You are, in American context, on the left. And I think because you're on the left, you have an obligation to endorse those values more often than not, meaningfully. It actually has to manifest in your statements and your activism. I think you can't just sit on them. I think you're too talented. You've got too much of a platform, and your platform's only going to grow. I think, like Destiny, you have an obligation to put your money where your mouth is and tell conservatives they suck and Democrats are better than them in terms of policy, record, rhetoric, messaging, blah, blah, blah. In terms of the institutions, I don't think you've distinguished meaningfully, to my benefit, a difference between a fetishization for institutions and a respect for them. I just want to say, for the record, I respect institutions too. I don't instantly want to go burn them down. I just think that if we can't reclaim them, if they can't be played correctly or the right way, if they're being corrupted or twisted by the opposition in bad faith with no limiting principle, then Democrats have an obligation to do the same, a moral obligation, because you can't win a game when the other player gets to write the rules and change the rules whenever they goddamn well please, and you just have to go back to whatever rules they want you to play by. You'll never win that way. And the point of politics is to win, to affect change. It's not an abstract Reddit, debate bro thought experiment where we're just completely unerring in our principles. They're real people with real consequences. And so the last thing I'll say is to everybody watching on Whick Stream, The Democratic Party is better than the Republican Party. On its very worst day, Democrats are better than the Republican leadership. There is no equivalent or analog to the worst of the Republicans on the Democratic side. That is a meaningful, vast, substantive difference. Again, just breathe it in, feel that, let it kill the false equivalence in both sidesism, and just know it and vote accordingly. This is Ted Cruz 2.0, aka Pondering Politics, aka Ruminate, aka Josiah, out.
Okay, that was a lot. Corey?
Well, I'll try to be brief. Make no promises. Well, first, thank you, Whick, for agreeing to do this. It takes courage to, I guess, subject yourself to conversion therapy. But I think the conversion, is slowly but surely happening. Hopefully, and also thank you, Katie, for inviting me. Super appreciated. And I echo a lot of the same sentiments that Ted Cruz just went through. The based Ted Cruz, not the unbased one. Where it's like, do I think you have an obligation to that strong a word? No. But let's just say I think you have maybe a responsibility, or rather I see someone who wants to be responsible, and I think you do want to be responsible with. And I'm not saying that you're being irresponsible. I just think you could be more responsible. Maybe a lot more, who knows, but that's just my opinion. But like, aside from that, I'm hoping we made it clear, at least I want to make it clear on my part. I don't think you're a bad person. I don't think you have ill intentions. I don't hate you. I like you. I care about you. I don't know how anybody gets the message that anybody here thinks you're a bad person. I'm here because, like, well, if I thought that you had ill intentions, I probably wouldn't be here. Or rather, I almost certainly wouldn't be here. So I still appreciate, despite my criticism, still appreciate everything that you do. And I don't take it for granted, especially when you have me on your own panels. So I'll leave it there for now. But thank you, everyone. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv, 𝐶oreCampbell84, and Twitter, Instagram, literally, it's Corey Campbell. Thank you so much.
My closing statement is that, first of all, I think, Whick, that was fucking rough. Like, that was amazing. Like, I don't agree with the things you said, but like, you standing firm like that was interesting. I also like, by interesting, I mean, I want to call it impressive, but I think, like, obviously I disagree with you, so calling it impressive would be like, but it fucking shows character, and like, I'm really happy that we came up with this idea, and I think I know that you don't feel bad by this experience, but what I did want to say outside of that, so first of all, thank you. Also, thank you for the people who joined. President was a last minute guy replacement, and it was nice of him to show, even though he was sighing and condescending a lot. But who am I?
Mr. President.
Mr. President. I am really grateful for Ted Cruz, who showed up. I know you took time out of your busy schedule being a politician to come to this panel. Corey, thank you, and I'm sorry you didn't get to talk much. You know how these panels go. It's a fucking nightmare. I actually think this conversation has been enlightening on a bunch of different ways. And I don't, usually a lot of the conversations on this space are like conservatives or leftists, or even centrists and leftists, but it doesn't break down like the ideological divide between those two things. And I think this conversation was quite interesting for that. Also, Whick, fuck most of your chatters. They're literally super chatters, the one who were too stupid to get any of my points, so they had to make dumb hyperboles. Now you go.
Well, first of all, anyone giving me money, I love you. Give me more.
Centrist!
That's why you're not on the left.
Look. Okay. This has been fun. I've enjoyed it immensely. I will always take the opportunity to stand for what I believe is right, even in the face of opposition. I think that I have demonstrated, right, that I am not a centrist. Now, if you still believe that, that is on you, right? Like, that's fair, right? But I think I have laid out why I do not believe I am a centrist fairly well. I've also laid out what I think is right and good. When it comes to institutions, when it comes to the way forward, because I wanna focus on what Josiah said first, right? So I agree with you. It's not a game, right? And that's why right? We have to play it right. Not how it feels, not what feels good, but what does good. I don't care about feelings when I don't want people to feel good. I want to do good, right? And I think that my way, right? And I know you disagree with me, but I think that my way ends up in the long term having better outcomes than your way. And I think that's demonstrable, right? But we're going to discuss this later on, right? In 2 weeks from now, at least a portion of it. That'll be fun. Okay. Corey, I do appreciate you. And again, I don't think any of you bad people either. I like you. That's why I'm agreeing to have you on and to talk to you. I like all of you, right? I think you all have things to bring to the table that are interesting, things that I can't bring to the table, right? Things that are my weaknesses. And I think you all have a voice and you all deserve to be heard. And your criticisms of me deserve to be heard. And that's one of the reasons I agreed to do this. Because I do believe, right, at the end of the day, that the best way to preserve democracy, to preserve freedom, to preserve life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is by letting people, even people who substantively disagree with me on those values, have a say.
Wick,
That's
I'm your
me,
favorite
Whick
though,
TV,
right?
Right? Oh, well, let me finish my closing.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's me. You can find me at twitch.tv/WhickTV. Tomorrow, we're going to be having, at 6 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have Ukrainian Anna. We're going to be having Dylan Burns. We're going to be having, oh man, what's his name? We're going to be having Fabian Liberty Scott. We're going to be having Non-Smoker. We're going to be having Omnislap. And we're going to be having, for the 6th person, we're going to have Brianna Wu. And they're going to be discussing the state of Ukraine, whether we should, as America, continue to fund Ukraine, right? And that should be an interesting discussion. So tune in there tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. But thank you again, Katie, for having me on. And thank you for Corey. And thank you, Ted Cruz, for both attending my TED Talk. Thank you.
I'm your favorite, right?
You know what? I don't pick favorites. You're all my favorite together.
I just want to say one thing.
Such a
I'm not
centrist
anonymous
answer.
with the favoritism.
Such a centrist
I want to
answer.
say one thing.
Fuck you.
$1,000 to say tell Katie she smells.
Did you boot him?
Yes, I did.
Pure
There's
evil.
anger to be
I was
had.
actually going to propose a panel for him, but I'll do that.
Oh no!
Okay.
What
wanna
was the
say
panel
one-
you want to propose?
He thought he was free.
It might be bad content. I don't know. I didn't bring this up during when we were dogpiling you because it wanted to derail it. But I think something was said of like, yeah, there's no coherent left, and that the left is just in opposition to the right. I would fundamentally disagree with that.
That's
I
a
think there's
Sunday
coherent
take,
left.
not a me take, and I was just operating on his framework because I disagree with that too. But I was
I would totally
speaking
fight
his language.
Totally fight any lefty that says that there's no coherent left.
Sunday, lefty on lefty violence. We love to see it, gang. We love to see it.
Oh my God.
No,
That's
thank
why
you
I
again.
proposed it.
I
First
do
more
have to
lefty
go. I do have to go.
Yeah, he's got friends and a life. He doesn't care.
Well, I don't know about that, but I do.
He
have to
does
go.
not.
So I'll see you guys later.
Pleasure.
Who
See
are we
you
rating
later.
into,
Be well.
gang? Which one are you? Or Katie, are
It
you
needs
still
to
gonna
be
be
a good
streaming?
lefty.
Don't raid into me.
It needs to be a good lefty.
She doesn't want your audience.
Or Corey.
I don't.
Katie,
Who am I? I can't see. Like the screen's wonky for me.
It has to be left leaning.
Corey,
I
are
swear to
you-
God, if you
I'm
raise
not
somebody
currently
who's-
streaming. My
Okay,
connection
who
is bad.
is? Who
I don't
we
know.
going
Let me
to?
check. Let me
I don't
check
know.
who's.
I don't
who it
stream.
is.
I don't know.
I do want to raid you, Katie, though.
But your audience doesn't even like me.
You
Not
don't know
yet,
that.
but they
Some of them
will,
do.
Because once Wick turns left,
In fact,
then so
I'm gonna
too shall
raid
his
you.
audience.
And if you don't want them there, you could just raid out yourself. But
Oh my God.
or you can ban them. I don't care. Right? It's your space. But we
Okay.
will raid you. And so, gang,
Fine.
remember,
Thank
say
you.
hi. Right? Remember, let her know that it is a hate raid.
That was dirty.
I think she knew that
Bye,
already.
Wick. Oh, let's see. I'm gonna go here in a second too.